Chapter 1293. In the base of Shangri-La, several mistresses of the Xia family rushed over after hearing the news. As the daughters-in-law of the Xia family, they must come to see their father-in-law. However, when the 6 daughters-in-law came to the gate, they didn't see Charlotte and Xia Changhe. After searching for a long time, they found that Charlotte and Xia Changhe were standing face-to-face on a piece of wasteland dozens of meters away. They seemed to be talking about something. Really, Dad is back. My husband didn't bring him home, but stood so far away to talk. What are they talking about? Jiang Rui said when she saw Charlotte and Xia Changhe. I don't know. Fan Fan sighed. Dad is a very strange person. He didn't come back when we got married, and he didn't come back when we gave birth to the child. The child is already so big, and he only came back once. He didn't even enter the door. What's wrong with him? Liang Xiao and Long Bing looked at each other, and Tang Yuyan also reacted calmly. These 3 women who used to be agents all knew the details of Xia Changhe. Although it was not comprehensive, in their opinion, it was not strange for Xia Changhe to act like this. Why don't we go and invite Dad to our house? Shinta Tianin said. I'll go invite him. He's already here. Why doesn't he enter the door? If it gets out, people will think that we are making things difficult for him as daughters-in-law, Tang Yuyan said, and then walked to Charlotte and Xia Changhe. Qianjun, who was standing at the door, suddenly said, Sister-in-law, let them talk. Don't go over. Why? Qianjun was silent for a moment before saying, he is very dangerous. Tang Yuyan was stunned for a moment. She thought Qianjun would give her more explanation, but Qianjun closed his mouth. This guy's words seemed to be worth 1 million. Long Bing walked to Tang Yuyan's side and said, don't go over first. Let's wait and see. Yes, Liang Xiao said. I will take care of everything. Tang Yuyan nodded and gave up the idea. The gazes of the 6 mistresses of the Xia family were focused on Charlotte and Xia Changhe, but they could not hear what the 2 men were talking about. When Xia Changhe's story reached the barren hills of Jerusalem and mentioned Kasia Ruiz, Charlotte could no longer calm down. He had a feeling that the rest of the story was not something he wanted to hear. When I first saw him, I thought he was just an old man. I didn't know he was the demon dueling with Isatab, because he was wearing silver armor, and I couldn't see his face at all. He was badly injured and lost his armor. He was lying on the wasteland, dying. I walked over and asked if there was anything I could do for him. I actually wanted to wait for him to die and take all the valuable things he had. I still remember the first thing he said to me. He said he didn't need help and that I was the one who needed help. He was speaking Chinese, very authentic Chinese. I was curious about him and his words, so I talked to him. He said he knew everything about me and that he could help me obtain great power. He could even let me live for hundreds of years. I was surprised. Wasn't it the elixir of immortality that Emperor Yongle wanted? I told him that I wanted it and asked him what I needed to pay. There is no free lunch in this world. He could help me, but I needed to pay the price of my freedom and loyalty. He wanted me to become his man and do things for him. When he made this condition, I didn't hesitate because I didn't have a choice. If I didn't accept his condition, I would die in a foreign country. I readily agreed to his conditions. At that time, he told me his identity. He came from another world, and he had lived for a very, very long time, so long that he didn't even know how long he had lived. Charlotte's heart thumped. Kasia Ruiz claimed to be the only prehistoric person. Could it be that he wasn't a prehistoric person of this world, but a prehistoric person of Isatab's world? The bronze grimoire that I obtained, as well as the iron book from the Vatican, were both brought by him from another world? Or did he purposely stay behind to confuse my vision and influence my thoughts? He felt that he was close to the truth. Although it wasn't the whole truth, it was at least a part of the truth. Xia Changhe's voice was calm and unhurried, but there was a hint of sadness in it. He gave me some medicine. Although he didn't tell me the name of the medicine, I guessed that it was the elixir of immortality that Zhu Di wanted. I ate the medicine that he gave me, and some changes happened to my body. I wasn't sick anymore, and my strength was much greater than before. Sometimes I even felt that I was the strongest warrior in the world. I was very grateful to him, so I stayed by his side. I thought that he would let me kill someone or build an army for him, and start his own dynasty. However, after a period of time, he only gave me a compass, the one that you're holding in your hand. Charlotte's gaze suddenly shifted to the compass in his hand, but his mind was blank. He told me that he needed to hibernate for a period of time, maybe a few hundred years. He told me to hold this compass and wait for its instructions, to wait for the birth of the chosen person. I asked him who the chosen person was, but he didn't give me any explanation. He only instructed me to follow his instructions. I held the compass, but I didn't receive any instructions from it. The needle of the compass was in a stationary state. After that, he became weaker and weaker. I knew that it was caused by the battle between him and Isatab. He was going to die, and Isatab was also going to die. I wanted to bury him, but he wasn't willing. That day, he called me to his side, told me some things, and left on his horse. Before he left, he told me that he would come back, and that I had to fulfill the oath I made to him. In fact, I fulfilled it. After he left, I also left Jerusalem. I carried the compass all over the world to find the chosen person. I walked from the Middle East to Africa, and from Africa to Europe. I stopped in foreign countries and wandered, lost my direction, and my faith was shaken. I tried a few relationships, fell in love with the local women, and married them, but I couldn't make them pregnant with my children. They grew old in front of me, but I was still young. I finally returned to my hometown, and I found out that the Ming dynasty had fallen, and the emperor at that time was the Qing dynasty's Qianlong. I couldn't find my family, so I started a new life. The days repeated themselves. Everyone longed for immortality, but I knew that it wasn't a good feeling. Loneliness, it was an indescribable loneliness. No matter how many people there were around you, you would feel that you were the only one in the world, and that no one else was like you. I didn't know what to do. Time no longer had any meaning to me. I kept waiting for the compass to give me new instructions, but it never moved. Later, the Qing dynasty fell, and the Republic of China was established, and then the Republic of China disappeared. I have witnessed too many changes of dynasties and the rise and fall of this nation. I could actually do something for it, but I didn't. I lack your patriotic heart, but as a Han, I am happy with what you are doing now. Charlotte smiled bitterly. Xia Changhe was indeed Kaiser Ruiz's man, just like Isatab's Da Vinci. Xia Changhe obtained the medicine from Kaiser Ruiz and obtained great power and a long life. If he wanted to help this ancient country and its people do something, the humiliation of this country and its people might not exist, and history might be rewritten. He had the ability, but he didn't do it. Sadly, he could understand Xia Changhe. Everything had its own rules of development, and it could also be understood as the steps of evolution. When a dynasty was established, it was bound to be destroyed one day, just like the changing of the seasons and people's birth, aging, illness, and death. If Xia Changhe interfered, it would be interfering with the laws of nature, the laws of evolution of the universe. Xia Changhe had witnessed too many changes of dynasties, and his heart was already numb. So how could he interfere? Later, a new country was established, and I also entered modern life. But no matter what era it was, I never forgot my mission, and I was always waiting for the appearance of the chosen person. Finally, one day, I heard some strange sound from the compass, like someone was speaking. I couldn't understand their language, but I knew that my mission had finally come. The night I heard the voice, I dreamed of a city. I had never been to that city, but I actually knew its name, Haizhu City. The next day, I packed my luggage and took the train to Haizhu. At that time, the needle of the compass was already trembling slightly, as if it was preparing. The second day after I arrived at Haizhu, the needle of the compass trembled violently and finally pointed in a direction. I still can't forget the scene at that time. It was a rainy night. I took the compass, and under its guidance, I came to the rooftop of a residential building. Then I found you. Charlotte couldn't help but say, "Did I fall from the sky?" Xia Changhe said, "Of course you didn't fall from the sky. You are a person of flesh and blood. When I found you, you were no different from an ordinary child. Then who gave birth to me and then abandoned me on the rooftop? You said that the people you transferred out of that area didn't have children at that time, and no one abandoned their children." Charlotte was excited. Xia Changhe shook his head. What I said is the truth. I really don't know the answer to this matter. Only you can find the answer yourself. Even Xia Changhe couldn't find his biological parents. So how could Charlotte find them? Seeing one's biological mother was nothing to a normal person, but to him, it had become an extravagant wish. His heart was filled with sadness. Xia Changhe sighed. However, although I didn't find your biological mother, I have been studying the possibility of you appearing. After all, hundreds of years ago, Kasha Ruiz asked me to look for you and told me that you were the chosen one. Charlotte looked straight at Xia Changhe. What do you want to say? Chapter 1294. Xia Changhe was silent for a moment before he said, Although I didn't find anything, nor did I find any clues or evidence, I have hundreds of years of experience, and I think you are what? Charlotte was inexplicably nervous. He was afraid that Xia Changhe would say that he was an alien who fell from the sky, or some kind of monster that had been created. If that was the case, he would completely lose his direction and be completely lost. My guess is that you are like the reincarnation of the living Buddha in Tibet. Do you understand? Xia Changhe said, looking very serious. A woman gave birth to you, but you told her that you were not her real child. She abandoned you, and maybe she had her own reasons. Your reasons, plus her reasons, created this result. So I came, because you were the chosen one. Charlotte was motionless. An illusion appeared in his mind. On a cold and rainy night, a woman whose face could not be seen climbed to the rooftop of a residential building with difficulty. She might have thought of throwing him off the roof, but she couldn't do it. Finally, she put him on the rooftop and then turned away. Of course, this is just my guess. Xia Changhe said, If you want the answer, you can only find it yourself. I believe you'll find it. Charlotte's thoughts were pulled back, and he smiled bitterly. Although I don't know where to start, I will find it if I can survive. Xia Changhe looked at Charlotte, looked into his eyes, and, at that moment, there was a trace of emotion in his eyes. That was the love of a father. I'm not related to you by blood, but in my heart, you are my son. Until now, I also ask you to believe me, that everything I do is for your own good. Charlotte was slightly stunned. Xia Changhe's eyes touched the softest part of his heart. Let me tell you another secret. Is it about the FA organization? Xia Changhe's lips curled into a smile. You're always so smart. Kasha Ruiz fell in a hibernation. I wanted to accomplish my mission. I had to have an armed force that could do anything. So the FA organization, which had developed in Mexico, became my goal. I joined the FA organization and used the FA organization's intelligence network to serve me. During that time, I also adopted some orphans and trained them. They later formed the Zodiac Squad. I've lived my entire life for a mission, and everything I've done has been for the sake of fulfilling that mission. I will kill anyone who stands in the way of my mission. You know what happened in Jerusalem? An Israeli archaeologist found the pyramid inside the mountain, and then the Americans went. Right at that moment, the compass moved again. Its pointer points to the pyramid inside the mountain. I've sent thousands of troops there. Qianjun found the amber in the pyramid, but he was captured by Mossad's people. After all, it's Israel. If they decide to capture someone, that person can't escape the fate of being captured, let alone in Israel. I had an appointment with Qianjun in Dubai, but he couldn't come. I rushed to Jerusalem when I received the news, but he had been secretly imprisoned. The piece of amber was also sent to Area 51 in Nevada. Later, they set up a laboratory, which is the AE Research Center. At that time, the compass gave me new confidence. I heard a voice, and then I had a dream. In fact, it wasn't a dream, but an instruction for me to give you the medicine in the amber. On one hand, it was my mission. I had to find a way to get the medicine in the amber back. On the other hand, it was Qianjun. I made a choice. I gave up on him. I sneaked into the AE Research Center and finally stole the medicine. I stole the AE capsule and returned to China. I did something to your body to give you a headache and lied that there was a tumor in your brain that needed this medicine to be cured. You were very obedient and started to take the medicine, but I didn't expect you to forget the last one. The FA organization became my problem. After I arranged for you and Xia Shui, I went to Mexico. I couldn't let the FA organization threaten you and Xia Shui, so I began to investigate the leader of the FA organization. It took me 2 years to find that guy, and I killed him. The way he controlled the FA organization was very special, and no one had seen his true face. This was why it took me 2 years to find him, but it was also the reason why I replaced him as the invisible leader of the FA organization. Charlotte interrupted Xia Changhe. Since you already control the FA organization, why would I let Ramosa kill Amanda? Pu Taiyong, Marcus, and Bagu? They were orphans that you raised, and they regarded you as their father. I didn't want them to die. It was a mistake to give up Qianjun, but I had no choice. I couldn't fight against the Mossad of Israel and the CIA of the United States. I couldn't save them from the hands of the Americans and the Israelis. But the deaths of Amanda and Pu Taiyong had nothing to do with me. What do you mean? After I controlled the FA organization, I gave Yin Fo and Augustman some privileges. After that, I left Mexico. I didn't go home. I went to Malta. Charlotte's heart moved. What did you go to Malta for? Xia Chang has said, because someone gave me instructions from Keja Ruiz. He was about to wake up. I had to carry out his instructions, so I went to Malta. I did something inhumane. He looked very painful. Sorry, I don't want to talk about that past. Even if he didn't say it, Charlotte could actually guess. The resurrection of Keja Ruiz required energy, and that kind of energy could only be found in the brain of a living person. He used inhumane to describe it, which was actually a very clear answer. After Keja Ruiz was resurrected, he gave me new instructions. He asked me to find a trace of Isotab, and I embarked on my journey again. In those years, it was actually Yin Fo and Augustman who controlled the FA organization. Later, I knew that Amanda and Pu Taiyong were dead, but I didn't feel it. I have witnessed too much death, and I don't feel anything about death anymore. Xia Changhe let out a long breath and suddenly laughed. Ha ha! It turns out that it's so comfortable to tell the secrets in your heart. This was what Xia Changhe was like. He took off his mysterious coat, but he was still a chess piece at the mercy of others. He gained great power and a long life, but he also lost the most precious thing as a person, which was emotion and freedom. I said, I will tell you everything when the time comes. I'm here because the time has come. I have told you everything about me, everything I know. Xia Changhe's eyes moved to the sky. The deep and distant sky seemed to evoke some memories in him, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. You are Keja Ruiz's man. Tell me, what does he want from me? Charlotte asked. Xia Changhe shook his head. I don't know. I really don't know. You are the chosen one, and you have your destiny. I also have my destiny, and now I am ready to meet my destiny. What do you mean? Charlotte felt the sadness in his heart. Xia Changhe didn't say anything, still looking at the sky. Charlotte suddenly understood. He was Keja Ruiz's man, but he told him so many secrets. Would Keja Ruiz let him go? He said that he was ready to meet his destiny, death. After a long silence, Xia Changhe said leisurely, Xinyu likes white dresses the most. She always likes to wear white dresses when she is with me. She is as clean as snow. I've been away from her for too long, and she's been lonely for so long. I also dreamed of her last night. She is waiting for me. I'm going to see her. I don't know why, but I'm so nervous, just like a young man who has just started to fall in love. Dad, Charlotte couldn't help but call out. You. Xia Changhe retracted his gaze from the sky and looked at Charlotte. Tears rolled down from Charlotte's eyes. What nonsense are you talking about? You have a son. You have a daughter. Where are you going? Xia Changhe was silent for a while and said, Thank you. Your calling me Dad makes my heart warm. I haven't felt this feeling for hundreds of years. But I can't be with you. I can't face Xia Shui. I killed her mother. Charlotte's heart seemed to be stabbed by a knife. From his point of view, he could certainly accept Xia Changhe and live with him. But what about Xia Shui? Although Xia Shui didn't know the truth, this was not fair to her at all. Xia Changhe smiled bitterly. Some things are destined. Fate. Everything has its fate. I have lived enough, and I don't want to continue. I am too lonely. Xianyu is also too lonely. I want to accompany her. Charlotte's tears flowed down silently. Xiao Changhe walked to Charlotte and put his hands on Charlotte's shoulders. Promise me you must kill them. Charlotte nodded. Xiao Changhe hugged Charlotte in his arms. This was a silent hug. The blue sky and white clouds were leisurely. Xiao Changhe let go of Charlotte and walked to a mountain. Charlotte turned around. Dad, where are you going? Xiao Changhe turned back and grinned. The place where I had my first date with Xianyu. But I won't tell you. That's my secret. Don't you want to see your grandchildren? I've seen them a long time ago. Xiao Changhe said. He turned back and strode forward, never looking back. Charlotte quietly watched Xiao Changhe's back as he walked further and further away. His eyes were wet with tears. At this moment, he seemed to have returned to when he was a child. The man who gradually walked away held his hand and walked on the busy street. He wanted popsicles, and the man took him to the popsicle vendor. He smiled and jumped, "Goodbye, Dad." Chapter 1295. At the gate of the Xanadu base, Jiang Rui couldn't stand anymore. She ran to Charlotte and shouted, "Honey, why did Dad come and leave? Why didn't you stop him?" Charlotte raised the back of his hand and wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. Then he turned to look at Jiang Rui. He forced a smile and said, "Rui, Dad left because of an emergency. I tried to keep him, but I couldn't. But it doesn't matter. He said he would come back when he finished his business." This was a lie, because Xiao Changhe would never come back. But this was also a kind lie, because it was the only way to not hurt anyone. Charlotte kept all the pain to himself. Jiang Rui didn't know what had happened. She said carelessly, "Really, if I had known, I would have come. If I had asked him, he would have stayed. I don't know how long he would have stayed, but at least he would have had dinner before he left." Charlotte said, "You are his daughter-in-law. He will definitely stay if you ask. Forget it this time. We'll talk about it next time. Come on, let's go home." Go home? How many times could he go home? Well, let's go home. Jiang Rui took Charlotte's arm and walked with him to the gate of the Xanadu base. The dinner was very rich and lively. This was the first dinner that Charlotte's family had after moving to Xanadu. Of course, it had to be grand. Some of the ingredients for dinner were flown in from Lhasa, and most of them were fruits and vegetables that the members of the Rescue Association had grown in the valley. Although the temperature here was very cold, modern agricultural technology could solve the problem completely. There was a large greenhouse on the side of the Xanadu base, and they could grow any kind of fruit and vegetable. This sumptuous dinner made Xia Lei feel completely at ease, because he felt that even if something bad happened to him, or if he left this world, his wife and children would still be able to live well here. Xiao Changhe's departure brought him pain, but the laughter of women and children was a good medicine, bringing him out of the pain. After dinner, the family went to the living room to rest. A few wimpy kids were fighting to watch cartoons, while the adults were sitting on the sofa and chatting. "Hubby, why did Dad come today?" Liang Xiao asked. Charlotte had a headache. It was not difficult to hide from Jiang Rui, but it was difficult to hide from Liang Xiao. After a moment of silence, he said, "He brought me some news about the two enemies. Are those two up to something again?" Long Bing's eyes were filled with worry. Charlotte said, "Yes, those two guys have made a new move. I blew up their base and slowed down the spread of the Hellhound virus. There's no way they won't retaliate against me. This is also the reason why I arranged for you guys to stay here. It's safer here." "What are they doing?" Tang Yuyin said anxiously. "Don't we have the Koen Pung bomber? We also have the Hades fighter. We can bomb them." Xiao Lei smiled bitterly. "If only things were that simple. I'll leave this place in half a month and put an end to everything. You guys wait here for my return if—" "Shut up." Jiang Rui's eyes were red. "There's no if. You're not allowed to have any if. We'll wait for you here. You must come back." Charlotte nodded. "I promise you, I will come back, I will." Fan Fan got into his arms like a clingy kitten. Her voice was as gentle as water. "Hubby, the children are still so young. You must not have any accidents. You must come back, okay?" Charlotte stretched out his hand and slapped her buttocks. With a crisp sound, Fanfan's big white ball rippled, and the ripples were beautiful and moving. The sound of the spanking also attracted the attention of all the women. How many times do I have to say it before you believe me? When have I ever broken my promise? Charlotte pretended to be angry. Fanfan looked very wronged. In the past, she would have started to act coquettishly at this time, but today, she couldn't do it. The corners of her eyes were wet, and she could cry at any time. Charlotte's palm landed on Fanfan's buttocks again, but this time his hand didn't have any strength. He couldn't bear to hit her hard, so the feeling of his slap changed, and it became a caress. Fanfan originally had an extremely sensitive physique. She, who was still sad, was suddenly stimulated by the opposite sensation. She immediately reacted, and her cheeks turned red. Don't be serious. The children are still here. What if they see us? Fanfan rolled her eyes at Charlotte. Her eyes were moist, and her charming gaze was exceptionally charming. Tang Yin whispered something to Long Bing, and Long Bing nodded. Then, Long Bing moved closer to Liang Xiao's ear and whispered something. Liang Xiao nodded again, and then moved closer to Jiang Rui's ear. Shintu Tianin's face blushed. Charlotte was still comforting Fanfan, and he didn't notice what his wives were discussing at all. The children were sleepy, and the women brought the children back to the house. They went back to their own rooms, and no one paid attention to Charlotte. Where do I sleep tonight? Charlotte said, but there was no one in the living room. He smiled bitterly, and his heart was filled with disappointment. He sat quietly for a while, and when he was about to leave, Shinta Tianin suddenly poked his head in from the door. Honey, come in my room for a while. I have something to tell you. A smile appeared on Charlotte's face. He got up and walked toward Shinta Tianin. What's the matter? Do you have to say it in the room? Shinta Tianin glared at Charlotte. Are you coming or not? Charlotte smiled and said, I'm here, aren't I? Shinta Tianin took Charlotte's arm and walked to her room. She walked very slowly, and she leaned her cheek on Charlotte's shoulder. She said gently, if only time could stop, then you wouldn't have to leave. You would stay with us and the children. If this is a wish, I'm willing to give everything I have to fulfill it. Charlotte's heart was melted by her. He reached out to hold her waist and picked her up. Shinta Tianin put her cheek on Charlotte's chest. She had 1,000 words in her heart, but she couldn't say a word. The sky was dark blue, and countless stars dotted it. It was distant and mysterious. No matter how great love was, it was as small as dust in front of them. Charlotte came to her room with Shinta Tianin in his arms, but he didn't see his baby, Xia Yang and Xia Yu. The room was empty and quiet. He asked curiously, where are your son and daughter? I asked Yin to take them to her room, Shinta Tianin said. You took them to Yu Yan's room. Are you willing to do that? Charlotte said with a smile, tell me the truth. Is there any conspiracy? Conspiracy, my ass. Shinta Tianin poked Charlotte's chest with a finger. It's your turn to spend the night here. Have you forgotten? Charlotte was stunned for a moment. He really had forgotten, but he couldn't be blamed. The end of his life was approaching, and he had too many things to do. When you were with Xiao and the others, they always slept with you. They were with you for several days a week, but I only had one night. Shinta Tianin's voice was soft. But you still don't remember. Charlotte felt apologetic in his heart. Tianin, Shinta Tianin covered Charlotte's mouth. Don't apologize. I don't need it. I can understand you. You've been so busy recently and have so many things to deal with. It's normal for you to forget. Charlotte placed Shinta Tianin on the bed and gently pressed against her. Promise me that no matter what happens, you must take good care of yourself and the child. Shinta Tianin bit her cherry lips, and then she nodded. Charlotte kissed her lips. His movements were very gentle. Shinta Tianin's response was also very gentle, but her body was soon ignited, and her response became passionate and urgent. She grabbed Charlotte's clothes in a panic, peeling him and herself off at the same time. Pieces of clothes fell to the carpet, silently protesting. But at the critical moment, Shinta Tianin pushed against Charlotte's chest with both hands and panted. Tell me, how do you feel when they're with you? Charlotte was speechless. Tell me. I want to know. Shinta Tianin looked very serious. Charlotte smiled bitterly. Excited, I think. Do you want it to be like that? Tianyin bit her lips again. Charlotte was stunned for a moment and said awkwardly, Tianyin, what's wrong? Of course he wanted to, but he knew her very well. She was a cold and aloof queen. She definitely wouldn't want to sleep with him with other women. He wouldn't let her do something she didn't like. You're embarrassed to say it, but I know you're thinking about it, right? Charlotte smiled awkwardly. It's very lively when the whole family is together. Pervert. A voice suddenly came from the direction of the bathroom door. Charlotte looked over and saw Tang Yuyin immediately. His eyes were also fixed on her. She was wrapped in a bath towel, and a pair of plump breasts propped up the towel. It gave people the feeling that they could jump out of the towel at any time, which was very scary. Her plump butt and slender waist formed a wavy curve, and the curve and bulge made people want to climb up. Below her perky but was a pair of slender and well-proportioned legs, which took up 2/3 of her body, as if they were carved out of white jade, perfect and flawless. Tang Yuyin walked towards Charlotte and Tianyin. Her long legs moved, and the towel rose and fell, revealing a secret scene in front of her long legs. Her aura had the attributes of a seductive spirit. You guys, Charlotte didn't know what to say, but at this moment, Tianyin hooked his neck and pulled him down. A bath towel fell to the ground. Tianyin's nervousness and shyness, Tang Yuyin's passion, and Charlotte was intoxicated by the tenderness of his two wives, unable to extricate himself. Their gentleness and softness made him forget the bad things, and also made him forget the fear and sadness. If fate couldn't be changed in the end, what would come would eventually come. Then he would let himself go before it came. I don't want to, it's so embarrassing. Just for a moment, okay? Okay, but be gentle. I'm coming. Yuyin, are the children asleep? Ugh, really, the children are sleeping soundly. Did you change the diapers? I can't take it anymore. Honey, make her shut up. The night was long, and he couldn't sleep. Chapter 1296. Half a month later, dawn hadn't arrived yet, and the sky was dark. The room was very quiet, and the women were sleeping on the biggest bed in Xanadu. Last night's absurdity made them tired, and their plan was to get up later than the sun. Charlotte didn't sleep all night. Throughout the night, after the passion subsided, he was thinking about something. 5 days later would be his deadline, but until now, he hadn't received any news, and he didn't find any trace of Keisha Ruiz. Would that guy appear on the last day and kill him? Charlotte couldn't guess Keisha Ruiz's thoughts. Until now, he didn't know what Keisha Ruiz's purpose was. After lying quietly for a while, Charlotte got up from the bed. He put on his clothes, and then kissed each of the wives on the bed. Jiang Rui, who was sleeping on her side, Liang Xiao, who was lying flat with one foot on Long Bing, Fan Fan, who was smiling, and Tang Yuyin, who was sleeping on her stomach. Finally, Tianyin, who was holding a pillow. The night when the family moved to Xanadu, Tang Yuyin led Tianyin astray. After that night, the biggest room and the biggest bed in Xanadu became their and Charlotte's heaven. This period of time was really absurd, very indulgent, very depraved, but really happy. I'm sorry, I don't want to leave you, but Charlotte wanted to leave a sentence, but he couldn't go on. Xiaolei quietly left the house where he and the women were having fun. This was the name he gave to this super big room, and for this reason, he suffered a lot of punches from the women. If he had a choice, he wanted to stay here forever, work during the day, play with the children, and share a big bed with his wives at night, and have a good time. But he had no choice, and he had to leave. He had to leave. This was the decision he made last night after thinking about it for the whole night. There were still 5 days before the deadline given to him by Keisha Ruiz. In fact, he could still enjoy a few more days of family and super blissful sex life here. But so what? When the time came, he still left. Moreover, if he continued to stay here, once Keisha Ruiz and Isitabu arrived and turned this place into a battlefield, his woman and children would be in grave danger. The door closed, and the seductive spring scenery in the room disappeared. At that moment, Charlotte couldn't hold back his tears. He gently opened the door and took one last look. The women on the big bed formed a white landscape, with some black interspersed in between. The mountain was high and the river was low. The curves were alluring. Their beauty and goodness entered his line of sight, as if they were branded in his mind. "Goodbye, my lovers." Charlotte closed the door and turned to leave. There were a few times when he wanted to turn back, but he resisted. He went into the room where the children slept, kissed each one, and left his blessing. "I'm sorry, my children. Daddy has to leave. Daddy may not be able to accompany you as you grow up, and I may not be able to see you get married and have children, but you have to believe that Daddy loves you and will always love you. Grow up well and be filial to your mother in the future." He couldn't continue, and his tears soaked his clothes. After a quarter of an hour, Charlotte carried a large backpack and walked towards the gate of Shangri-La. A few heavily armed members of the rescue society stared at him, but no one made the slightest reaction. Charlotte walked past them like a transparent cloud of air, and they had no impression of him in their minds. In the sky, a huge black object descended from the sky. It was the pinnacle of Rema Group, the Kuan Pung bomber. Charlotte got on the Kuan Pung bomber. The Kuan Pung bomber sprinted on the runway and then rose straight into the sky. Charlotte's gaze moved to Shangri-La, surrounded by mountains. It became smaller and smaller, and he was getting further and further away from his woman and children. Parting forever. The sadness of parting was like a saltwater lake that couldn't see today, and every drop of water was a sad tear. Shangri-La disappeared from his sight, and Charlotte could no longer control his emotions. Tears flowed out of his eyes, and his voice was choked. "Wait for me, my lover. Wait for me, my child. I will definitely come back." The dawn pierced through the darkness. Above the clouds, the wings of the Kuan Pung bomber reflected a cold light under the sun. A slim figure emerged from the cockpit, and Super Xiaoqin coughed. "Master, you're crying." Charlotte reached out and wiped away the tears at the corner of his eyes. "Yesterday afternoon, I left a video in my hacker's computer. After I leave, you can play it and let your mistresses have a look." "Yes, master. What do you want to say?" "Seeing you cry makes me sad. Can you tell me where you're going?" "Do you mean in the future or now?" "Now and in the future. I want to know both," Super Xiaoqin said. Charlotte was silent for a moment before saying, "I'm going Malta now, but I don't know in the future." "Wah!" Super Xiaoqin suddenly burst into tears. Charlotte smiled bitterly. "Why are you crying? Even your tears are fake. Is there a need to cry?" "I'm sad. It's none of your business." Charlotte said, "Promise me, after I leave, you must take care of my woman and child." "I will." Super Xiaoqin choked and said, "Do you still want to continue attacking the U.S. capital market?" Charlotte said, "Of course. Do you want to do as much as you can? If you're not here, is there any point in me doing this?" Super Xiaoqian's eyes sparkled with tears. The virtual tears looked like they were about to flow out, and it was very realistic. "Of course there is a point. My last order for you is to take care of my woman and child, protect China, and attack the U.S., Charlotte said. "I will do it." Super Xiaoqian's tears came out. Okay, you go back. When you get to Malta, you can come out and fly the plane back to China. "Now I want to be alone," Charlotte said. "Master, go back." Super Xiaoqian disappeared from the cockpit. Although she didn't want to leave, she had to carry out Charlotte's orders. The Kuan Pung bomber flew in the direction of the Mediterranean Sea. Where's Cassia Ruiz? There was no way to know. But Charlotte knew that Cassia Ruiz's base was in Malta because his father had said something when he said goodbye. That was after he controlled the FA organization. He went to Malta to help Cassia Ruiz resurrect. The final battle needed a battlefield. Charlotte wouldn't choose any place in China, let alone a paradise. He chose Cassia Ruiz's base. Do. The satellite phone suddenly rang. Charlotte took out the satellite phone, but he didn't see the number. He hesitated for a moment, but he still slid the answer button. Breathe. A strange voice came, and the cockpit of the Kuan Pung bomber was suddenly filled with a terrifying atmosphere. "Cassia Ruiz." Charlotte said, "I'm ready." "Where are you?" "Charlotte." The voice on the satellite phone suddenly changed into a woman's voice. Charlotte could recognize this voice even if it turned into ashes. The person who called was Isatab. "You're still alive." Charlotte's voice was very cold. "Do you want me to die that badly?" Isatab's voice was a little less cold. "You did such a thing to me, and I didn't kill you with my own hands. Would I be willing to die? Then come." "I'm going to Malta," Charlotte said. "You're going to Malta? Do you want to die that badly?" Isatab's voice. Charlotte said, "Isn't everyone going to die? What does it matter if it's a few days earlier or a few days later? But you have to think about it clearly. Cassia Ruiz's base is in Malta. If I go this time, I'll be walking into a trap. If you don't come, you won't get anything. We need to meet. Then let's meet in Malta." After a pause, Charlotte said, "Let's do it in Valletta." "We're in Valletta." Charlotte said, "East of Valletta, into the mountains, there's an old castle. That's where the Knights Hospitaller are. I'll wait for you there. Don't play tricks with me. That's it then. If you want anything from me, then come quickly. If you're late, you won't get anything." With that, Charlotte hung up the phone. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. In the eyes of the two demons, Isatab and Cassia Ruiz, he was like a piece of meat that they were fighting to eat. As a fat piece of meat, he had no choice. He could either be eaten by Isatabu or be eaten by Cassia Ruiz. The Kuan Pung entered India's airspace and continued flying in the direction of the Mediterranean Sea. Charlotte looked back at the big backpack on the co-pilot seat and thought to himself, "Whether I can survive this time depends on whether you can help me." The big backpack contained the box of the world, the crystal skull, and the silver armor from the Knights Hospitaller. But even with these things, he still didn't have the slightest confidence. He had always thought that Isatab was the scariest, but only now did he understand that it wasn't Isatab who was the scariest, but Cassia Ruiz. He had lived longer than Isatab, was stronger, and more cunning. This was because Cassia Ruiz had been planning all this since 600 years ago. Beep, 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 beep. The satellite phone rang again. Charlotte took a look and saw that it was Long Bing's number. It wasn't until the 55th second that he bit the bullet and picked up the phone. "Bing, it's me. Daddy, where have you been?" Xiaolong's voice came from the satellite phone. Charlotte was silent for a while before saying, "Daddy has something to do. Listen to Mommy. Daddy will be back soon." "No, I don't want to listen. I want you to come back," Xiaolong said stubbornly. Charlotte's eyes were wet. "Remember, study hard and be a useful person." "No, I want you to come back," Xiaolong shouted. Charlotte smiled bitterly. Just as he was about to hang up the phone, Long Bing's voice came from the satellite phone. "Hubby, I'll wait for you to come back," Long Bing said. "Wait for me to come back," Charlotte said. "I love you. I love you." Long Bing's voice was choked with sobs. Charlotte hung up the phone and squeezed it hard. The satellite phone shattered with a crack. He wanted to cut off all contact. If death was inevitable, he wanted to die quietly and not implicate anyone. Chapter 1297. Maltese Island Valletta. Charlotte jumped down from the Kuan Pung bomber. The Kuan Pung bomber turned around and flew east. Super Xiaoqian emerged from Charlotte's multifunction watch, but found that she was still in the cockpit of the Kuan Pung bomber. Only then did she realize that Charlotte had taken off his multifunction watch and placed it on the seat in the cockpit before jumping. She then activated the camera of the Kuan Pung bomber, and Charlotte's figure suddenly appeared on one of the displays. He fell rapidly from the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. His figure looked very small in the sky, but she felt that he was incomparably majestic, strong enough to support the sky and the earth. "Goodbye, my master," Super Xiaoqian said. Tears rolled down from her eyes and splashed on the seat in the cockpit, but nothing was wet. Everything about her was virtual, but her emotions were real. The strong wind blew in the sky. Charlotte opened his arms and felt the wind passing through his armpits. It felt like he had grown wings and was flying in the blue sky and white clouds. The land became bigger and bigger in his sight. Charlotte had already seen the Cross Mountain in the east of Valletta and the Knight's Castle hidden in the valley. The holy palace of the Knights Hospitaller was in the Cross Mountain, and the Knight's Castle was the first stop. Charlotte had been here before, and he was familiar with everything here. It was also that time when he killed the leader of the Knights Hospitaller, Angilio. Now, the leader of the Knights Hospitaller was the former puppet leader, Walton, and that guy had signed a verbal peace agreement with him. After that agreement, the Knights Hospitaller did not come to trouble him. This was not because the Knights Hospitaller kept their promise, but because they did not dare to provoke Charlotte at all. A man who dared to blow up the U.S. 7th Fleet and Area 51. Did the small Knights Hospitaller have the courage and strength to go against him? The Knights Hospitaller regarded Cassius Ruiz's armor as a sacred relic and regarded Cassius Ruiz as a horseman of the apocalypse who rode on a red horse and represented war. It was a good choice for Cassius Ruiz to set his headquarters in a place close to him, but the Knights Hospitaller probably did not know of his existence yet. Where in Malta was Cassius Ruiz's lair? Charlotte didn't know. He opened the parachute and controlled the parachute to descend into the valley where the Knight Castle was located. He had thought it through very clearly. Cassius Ruiz's nest was there, and he didn't need to investigate or search for it all. All he needed to do was to appear here. As long as he was in Malta, Cassia, Ruiz, and Isotab would come here to look for him. The Knight's castle came into sight. Before Charlotte landed on the ground, he was quickly discovered by the armed men of the Knights Hospitaller. The ancient bell on the bell tower rang, and a dozen armed men rushed out of the castle. A few of them were riding off-road motorcycles, while others were riding horses. Times had changed, and knights had to adapt to the changes of the times. Motorcycles were obviously better adapted to modern society than war horses. When Charlotte landed on the ground, the dozens of hospital knights who rushed out of the castle had already surrounded him. More than a dozen black muzzles were aimed at Charlotte. However, Charlotte treated these tall and strong armed men like air. He slowly took off the parachute bag on his back, and then put the large equipment bag on his back. "Who are you?" One of the armed men shouted at Charlotte in Italian. Charlotte's lips curled into a smile, and he replied in Italian, "Charlotte." "Charlotte?" The armed man who asked the question was stunned for a moment, and then he suddenly laughed. "Damn, do you think you're a bouffon? If you tell me your name, will I treat you to a cigarette? Or a drink?" "Huh?" The dozens of armed men laughed loudly. The leader of the armed men suddenly stopped laughing and roared fiercely, "Kneel down." Charlotte didn't move, and then he said lightly, "Call Walton. He knows what to do. Also, if you are rude to me again, just one more time, and I will kill you." The leader of the armed men's mouth twitched, and just as he was about to flare up, another armed man beside him suddenly pulled his hand and said nervously, I remember who Charlotte is. He is the owner of the Rema Group." The dozens of armed men from the hospital knights were instantly stunned. Their eyes were originally filled with ridicule and contempt, but now they were filled with fear. It was normal for these armed men to not know who Charlotte was, but anyone who played with guns knew about the Rema Group. Many gunmen dreamed of owning a Gale assault rifle from the Rema Group, or an XL 2500 sniper rifle. This man was still wanted by the United States, and was regarded as the #1 enemy by the United States, but he was still alive. But what made these armed men afraid was that this man in front of them had learned from the Holy Palace, and had taken away the holy relic of the hospital knights. However, they were, after all, members of the hospital knights, and the power of faith could sometimes overcome fear. An armed man standing behind Charlotte quietly aimed the muzzle at Charlotte's vest, and the fingers of his right hand pressed on the trigger of the pistol. If they killed Charlotte and sent his body to the United States, maybe the United States would recognize the status of the hospital knights as a sovereign country in the world. Killing Charlotte could also be considered as revenge for the former commander, Angilio. "You better not think that way." Charlotte seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. "I will give you 1 second to put down the gun, or you will shoot." There was no gap in 1 second, and it passed in the blink of an eye, so fast that people had no time to think. Bang! A gunshot rang out. The gunman who fired the shot fell to the ground, and there was a bloody hole in his temple. Blood and brain matter flowed out of his brain. But until the moment of his death, he did not understand why he could not control his arm and shot himself. All of this happened and ended in a second. It was so fast that no one could believe it. You. The leader of the armed men's face was pale, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He subconsciously wanted to shoot, but he suddenly found that he could not control his fingers at all. Not only him, but all the armed men of the hospital knights were the same. They wanted to shoot, but they could not. Moreover, as the desire to shoot became stronger, a voice appeared in their minds, telling them to raise the muzzle, point it at their own heads, and then shoot. They did not know that their brain waves had been captured, and their thoughts were also controlled. More than a dozen of them surrounded Charlotte with their guns, and it seemed that they could shoot Charlotte at any time, but the reality was that Charlotte could kill them all with just a thought. However, Charlotte did not do this. He just said calmly, "Call Walton. He knows me, and he will know how to deal with this. I am not here to start a war. If I want to kill all of you, none of you will survive. As for your castle and the holy palace, if I want them, they will be turned into ruins." The leader of the armed men suddenly found that he could move his hand, but he did not dare to move recklessly. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. Charlotte said, "Call Walton. I do not want to say it a third time." The leader was still hesitating, but his hand had already reached into his pocket. His face was drained of all color, and his voice trembled. You don't kill me. I'll make a call. I'll make a phone call." "That's right." Charlotte looked around and said to the remaining armed men, "Put down the muzzle, or I can't guarantee that no one will accidentally fire and die." This sentence was like an order that could not be disobeyed, and everyone put down their guns. The leader of the armed forces quickly made a call. He briefly explained the situation and then passed the phone to Xiaolei. In a trembling voice, he said, "Sir, our regiment commander wants to speak to you. Charlotte took the phone and said, "Mr. Walton, long time no see." "Mr. Xiao, what do you want to do?" Walton's voice was full of panic and fear. "We have a prior agreement. Our holy relic is still in your hands. We have not come to ask for it, have we? Our holy virgin has been serving you, and we have not called her back. So, there is no reason for you to start a war with us." Charlotte said, "I am not here to start a war with you. I just came to Malta to meet someone. I want to stay in your castle for a few days." "Is that okay?" No problem. "Mr. Xia, please give the phone to my man, and I will ask him to arrange a place for you and the Holy Virgin," Walton said. "There is no need for the Holy Virgin. Also, I have to remind you that my visit this time is confidential. If you leak the news that I am in Malta to the Americans, I will use my bombers to erase you from the earth," Charlotte said. "Mr. Xia, are you kidding me? I would not dare to do that, even if you gave me 10 guts. You even dared to blow up the 7th Fleet and Area 51. We are friends, not enemies." Walton's voice trembled. "Thank you." After saying this, Charlotte handed the phone to the leader of the armed men. The leader of the armed men took out his cell phone and said a few words to Walton before hanging up. His attitude also took a 180-degree turn. His face was filled with a fawning smile. "Mr. Xia, please follow me." Charlotte nodded. The leader of the armed men shouted to one of his men, "What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and help Mr. Xia with his backpack." An armed man followed up to help Charlotte with his backpack, but Charlotte said, "No, I will carry my own backpack. Just give me a motorcycle." The things in his equipment bag were too important, even related to his life and death. He would not let it leave his body. An armed man handed his off-road motorcycle to Charlotte, and Charlotte rode the motorcycle to the castle. Behind him, a group of armed men on horses and motorcycles followed closely. The smart man who wanted to sneak attack Charlotte was lying on the back seat of a motorcycle, and the bullet hole in his head was still bleeding and brain juice was still flowing. After entering the castle, the leader of the armed men arranged the best room in the castle for Charlotte. "Mr. Xia, if you need anything, just tell me. Our commander said that no matter what you want, we will meet your needs. By the way, my name is Johnson." At the door, the leader of the armed men introduced himself with a flattering smile. Charlotte said, "Just don't disturb me." "Okay, Mr. Xia, what would you like to eat for dinner?" Johnson said. Charlotte reached out and closed the door. Johnson's nose almost hit the door. He was stunned for a few seconds before he took a step back and turned to leave. Being treated like this, he did not have the courage to get angry. In fact, during the time he spent with Charlotte, the cold sweat on his back had not stopped. Charlotte opened the extra-large equipment bag and took out the silver armor, the crystal skull, and the box of the world. He put on the armor and put the crystal skull and the box of the world in a special bag. There were also parts for 2 guns in the bag, an XL 2500 sniper rifle and a Gale assault rifle. There were also hundreds of rounds of ammunition and a few high-explosive grenades. He was ready to fight. Would Castilla Ruiz come? Chapter 1298. In the evening, Johnson brought the 4 women to Charlotte's room. The 4 women were holding food in their hands. Some were steaks, some were fruits, and some were red wine. The 4 women were all very young and beautiful. Their figures were even better. They were tall and had long legs. Coupled with their breasts and hips, they could easily arouse men's desire. With delicious food and beautiful women, the Knight's Hospitaller had obviously come to deliver food to Charlotte. The 4 women were the new generation of holy maidens of the Knight's Hospitaller. They were Helena, Jennifer, Constantine, and Julia. The 4 holy maidens had blonde hair, red hair, black hair, and brown hair. When they walked together, their long hair swayed like a waterfall under the sun. They were as beautiful as Giovanna and the other 3, but they didn't have the visual effect of twin sisters. "Don't be afraid. I heard he's very good to women," Johnson said as he walked. As Johnson walked, he said, "The previous generation of Sanuses lived very well with him. I heard that they are now multimillionaires. As long as you can please him, he might give you a large sum of money." "Is he really the richest man in the world?" the blonde Helena asked. "Of course. It's said that his wealth is close to $1 trillion. Johnson said that one afternoon was enough for him to get some information from the internet and the Knight's Hospitaller's intelligence network. "Is he really a demon?" the red-haired Jennifer asked. "Giovanna and the others call him the Son of God," Johnson said. "There's a saying in the Rescue Society that Charlotte has divine power and is the Son of God. They worship him like a god. So from the Rescue Society's point of view, he's not a demon. But we don't recognize the Rescue Society. Whether he's a demon or a son of God depends on your investigation." "I'll know the answer after I touch his body," the black-haired Constantine said. "I'm afraid you can't touch it. You have to blow on it," the brown-haired Julius said. "Go to hell. You're shameless." The black-haired Constantine kicked Julia with her foot, but her action was not aggressive at all. It was gentle and playful. The 4 women talked and laughed as they followed Johnson to a room on the 2nd floor. When they reached the door, they finally quieted down. When they came, they were very relaxed and full of imagination about the mysterious man. But now they were nervous, afraid to see him. Johnson was also very nervous. He took a deep breath and knocked on the door. "Mr. Xia, I'm here to bring you dinner." Through the door came Charlotte's voice. He spoke fluent Italian. "I have my own food, so I don't need your dinner. Take it back. Take it back." Johnson bit the bullet and said, "Mr. Xia, this is the order of our commander. If we neglect you, we will be punished by the commander. Please, take it back. I don't need your food." "I don't want to repeat myself a 3rd time," Xiaolei said. "Take it back. Take it back, I said. Xia, I said. I don you." Helena walked to the door and said, "Mr. Xia, if you don't accept our service, we will really be punished. Please accept our service for Giovanna's sake." Footsteps came from behind the door. A smile appeared on Johnson's face. He felt that the information was correct. Charlotte was good to women. Women were his weakness. The 4 women breathed a sigh of relief. The door opened. Johnson and the 4 women looked at Charlotte. At that moment, all 5 of them were stunned. Xiaolei, who had appeared at the door, was dressed in silver armor. He looked mighty and tall, like a crusader on an expedition to the east. This. Johnson pointed at the silver armor on Charlotte. His fingers were trembling, and so was his voice. "Isn't this our holy relic?" Xiaolei nodded. "That's right. It's your holy relic. I took it from Angelio. It's mine now." Johnson felt as if 100 alpacas were running happily in his heart. All the words in his heart converged into one word. F***CK. Stealing the holy relic of the Knights of Hospital and then wearing it in the outpost castle of the Knights of Hospital was no different from slapping the faces of all the Knights of Hospital. What made Johnson want to vomit blood was that even if Charlotte slapped the Knights of Hospital in the face, the Knights of Hospital could not show any temper. Do you want to take it back? Charlotte looked at Johnson and asked. No, no, no. Johnson hurriedly shook his head. Mr. Xia, our commander made it very clear that you are our friend, not our enemy. As for the whereabouts of the holy relic, let the future generations solve it. Charlotte said, bring it in. The four holy ladies entered the room in a line, but Johnson turned and left. The four holy ladies put the food and wine on the table, but they did not leave. They stood by the table and looked at Charlotte cautiously. Charlotte said, what are you still doing here? You have put the things down. You can go. However, the four holy ladies did not move. The red-haired Jennifer bit the bullet and said, Mr. Xia, we can't go. Charlotte took off his helmet and revealed an unhappy face. Mr. Xia, don't be angry. The black-haired Constantine said, we know Giovanna and the others. We often have tea and chat together in Italy. The brown-haired Julia also said, yes, we are good friends with Giovanna and the others. Mr. Xia, please let us stay in your room for the sake of our friendship with Giovanna and the others. After a pause, she added, well, Mr. Xia, if you want, you could do anything to us. Charlotte glanced at the empty milk bottles beside the bed and then at the four holy ladies' towering breasts. The desire to have a full meal suddenly emerged and overcame all other thoughts. Seeing Xia lay looking at their breasts with feverish eyes, the four holy maidens suddenly became nervous, but they still maintained a calm expression on their faces. They had come to dedicate themselves. Charlotte was interested in them, which was actually a good thing for their mission. But after all, they were holy ladies, virgins who had not experienced the world. When they thought of that kind of thing, they could not help but feel nervous and shy. The four holy ladies were nervously waiting for Charlotte's next move, but they waited for a sentence that made them blush and did not know what to do. Then give me some milk. I want to drink milk, said Charlotte. Mr. Xia, we haven't had a child yet, Julia cautiously reminded Charlotte, for fear of making Charlotte unhappy. Of course I have my ways. You just need to agree. Charlotte said, if you agree, you can stay. If you don't agree, you can leave. The four holy ladies looked at each other and nodded at the same time. They had no other choice. This was the order of Commander Walton. As knights and the holy ladies of the Knights of the Hospital, they had a firm belief in the spirit of sacrificing themselves for the Knights of the Hospital. It's good that you agree. Charlotte walked up. As he walked, his eyes quickly darkened, and the eyes of the four holy ladies standing in front of him lost their light. They became empty and lifeless. When the four holy ladies came back to their senses, it was already a few minutes later. They saw that Charlotte was still standing in front of them, but they did not say anything. My breasts. Jennifer seemed to feel some strange changes in her body. She reached out and pinched her full and firm breasts. As a result, the silk cloth in front of her chest was soaked when she pinched it. Constantine's was even more exaggerated. She did not reach out to pinch, but a little white liquid emerged from the gap of the cloth at the highest point of her chest. Helena and Julia were in the same situation. In the blink of an eye, the white liquid had soaked the cloth in front of their chests, and the wet marks were constantly expanding. Take a cup and squeeze it out yourself, Charlotte said. As soon as he said that, Helena suddenly bent her long legs and knelt in front of Charlotte. The other three women also knelt down and then made the sign of the cross with their hands. They murmured, thank God, praise God, for giving us the opportunity to nurture the Son of God. Charlotte was a little speechless, but he did not interrupt their prayers. The four holy ladies finished praying and stood up from the ground. Each of them reached out and grabbed the lapels of their clothes and then pulled them to the left and right. Whoosh! In that instant, a snow-white scenery appeared in front of Charlotte. It was of different shapes, different sizes, and the same undulations. It was extremely spectacular. However, what really tempted Charlotte was the white liquid. He was eager to get the energy contained in it. When he smelled that unique fragrance, the energy of the branding power in his body was already stirring. During his time in Xanadu, he had to drink the milk of Giovanna and the other three, as well as Akiko, Tsukino, every day. The milk of women who had not had children contained more powerful energy, but that kind of energy would weaken as he ate. In fact, when he left, the milk of Giovanna and the other three, as well as Akiko Tsukino, did not have much energy that he wanted. It was also during that period of time that he figured out the situation. The first milk produced by a woman who had been deeply hypnotized into a cow was the best. Every drop of milk contained rich energy and was very precious. And as he ate, the women who were deeply hypnotized by him and produced milk for him would gradually lose that kind of energy. Their bodies needed to rest for at least a few months to recover to the state of milk production that he wanted. This was actually a law of nature. Nothing was inexhaustible. This was the case with oil resources, and the same was true for women's milk. With excessive exploitation, what came out of the oil field was not oil but water. And if they did not listen to the milking and eating, the women's milk would also become a nutritious drink. Mr. Xia, is that the bottle? Helena pointed to the glass bottle on the bedside table. Charlotte nodded, and then he stuck out his tongue and pursed his lips. He found that he was really addicted. Smelling the unique milk fragrance from the bodies of the holy maidens, his saliva was about to flow out. Helena and the other three went to the bedside table to take a glass bottle each, and then tried to milk Charlotte. The mouth of the bottle is too small. It's not easy to squeeze, Helena said. Really? Why do I have so much milk? Constantine said. Oh, I missed again, Jennifer exclaimed. Son of God, do you have a bigger bottle? Julia, who was holding a snow-white bottle in one hand and a bottle in the other, looked at Xia Lei with an innocent and pitiful expression on her face. Charlotte suddenly walked over, pushed her down on the bed, and then opened his mouth and kissed her. It was shameful to waste, but glorious to save. Chapter 1299. The night gradually deepened. Darkness enveloped the sky and the earth, and there was no light from the moon or stars. There were only a few candles and oil lamps in the ancient castle. They were like lighted matches in the dark night, and could be blown out by the wind at any time. There was no lightning, and rain came without warning. Dense raindrops fell from the dark clouds, knocking on the tiles and windows of the ancient castle, making dripping sounds. This sound had the attribute of tranquility, and it could calm one's mind. But in this room, it was a different situation. No one could remain calm. The silver armor had already left Charlotte's body, and pieces fell here and there on the carpet. The clothes of the four holy knights had also fallen on the carpet, one piece here and one piece there, giving a messy scene. The old European-style bed was even more messy. Drinking milk was nothing in itself. It was the first thing a person would do when they were born. But Charlotte was a normal man. His ability in that area was also proportional to his needs. The stronger his ability, the stronger his needs. In addition, if he drank too much milk, he would get drunk, and once he was drunk, he would not be able to control himself. The four holy knights teased and seduced him, and that would naturally happen. Turning the holy knights of the hospital into a woman seemed to be what Charlotte was best at. He had already done it once, and now he was doing the same thing again. In fact, he also wanted to control his impulses, but in the end he failed. He was more impulsive than impulsive. The milk of the four holy knights brought him rich energy that nurtured life, and it also gave him the desire to create life. This actually happened to Giovanna, Stella, Rosa, and Teresa, as well as to Akiko Tsukino, and it was a regular occurrence. If there was a side effect of drinking milk to become stronger, then it was probably this. But every time he vented, the desire would subside, and his body would return to normal. So this side effect was also natural, and there were no toxic side effects. Outside the window, the pitter-patter of rain could be heard. There were also many voices inside the window. Some were praising, Some were begging for mercy, some were moaning in pain, and some were moaning in drunkenness. They gathered together and formed a hymn of life with a strong rhythm. After a long, long time, all the torment stopped. The passion faded from the bodies of the men and women, but the still picture was still chaotic. Helena said in a soft voice, "Son of God, how are Giovanna and the others?" Charlotte said, "They are living a good life. The Rescue Society helps those who suffer. They have led the Rescue Society to do many meaningful things." That, Constantine said. Knight Captain Johnson said that they're all multimillionaires now. Is that true? Charlotte said, "Yes, they're my people. I have the responsibility to make sure they live a good life." The four holy maidens looked at each other. Although no one said anything, their eyes were filled with envy. They were all holy maidens of the previous generation, and they had all been slept with by this man in front of them. Giovanna and the others had become multimillionaires, but they had gotten nothing other than that. They were all holy maidens selected by the Knights Hospital. Why was there such a big difference? Charlotte's branding power energy field had already captured the brain waves of the four women. He knew better than them what was going on in their heads. His eyes swept over the four tempting bodies and the granary that had nurtured him. He couldn't help but feel grateful. He didn't want to owe anyone anything, so he said, "Give me your account numbers. I'll give you $5 million. $5 million? The four holy maidens were stunned. Charlotte said, "You served me, fed me, and gave me the best things as a woman. Of course, I have to repay you. So, I will give you $5 million. I hope you will accept it." Wow, $5 million. Each of us can get $1,250,000. Constantine suddenly became excited. She clenched her fists and waved them hard. Her snow-white breasts suddenly bounced. "We are all millionaires." "Huh?" Julia laughed loudly. Helena and Anna hugged each other. Their snow-white breasts pressed against each other as if they were going to merge together. Such a hug could only be described with the word beautiful. Charlotte seemed to be influenced by them. He smiled and said, "You are wrong. It is not a total of $5 million. It is $5 million for each of you." Ah. The four women were stunned again. Charlotte smiled and said, "Only $5 million for four of you. What kind of person do you think I, Charlotte, am?" The four women were speechless. If what happened just now was regarded as a deal, it was probably the most expensive deal in the world. But obviously, it was not a deal. They had volunteered for the Knights Hospitaller for their faith and the spirit of sacrifice. Of course, it was better to make money while sacrificing for their faith and the spirit of chivalry, so that they could live comfortably for the rest of their lives. As for Charlotte, he had received their service, so it was reasonable for him to compensate them. Just as the four saints were dumbfounded, Xiaolei said, "Give me a cell phone and give me your account numbers. I'll just send an email. I will get it." Helena could not wait to jump off the bed. Then, she took out a phone from her clothes and handed it to Charlotte. She bounced over and back. Her breasts and the big white breast trembled. It was extremely tempting. The four women gave him 4 account numbers. Charlotte edited the 4 accounts into an email and then sent it to Super Xiaoqian, asking her to transfer $20 million to these 4 accounts. Super Xiaoqian would execute his instructions after receiving the email. This was as easy as taking something out of his pocket for him, buying a full meal and having a good time with a woman with $20 million. In this world, only Charlotte would have such courage. There would not be another person like him. However, money was meaningless to him. As long as he wanted it, Super Xiaoqian would get it for him. "It's done. Go and check your accounts in 5 minutes," Charlotte said as he handed the phone back to Helena. "Thank you, son of God. I have only just realized why Giovanna and the others are willing to follow you with all their hearts. They're so lucky. I'm so envious of them." As she spoke, Helena opened her arms and gave Charlotte a fierce hug. The other 3 women also came over. It was obvious that they were going to start a new war. Charlotte said, "Go to sleep. I will wake you up tomorrow morning." He smiled. "You will only be able to prepare breakfast for me when you are refreshed." A shy blush appeared on the cheeks of the four women. How could they sleep in such a situation? The $5 million was burning their bodies like fire. They wanted to repay Charlotte with the good things they pursued. They also longed for water to extinguish the fire in their bodies. Charlotte knew very well what they wanted, but he was already full. The air that came out of his mouth and nose was filled with the fragrance of milk. Looking at the four women whose eyes were filled with desire, his eyes slowly darkened. His voice was also filled with a demonic feeling. Go to sleep. You need sleep. This was deep hypnosis. Under normal circumstances, as long as he did this, the four women would fall asleep. However, something unexpected happened this time. He had hypnotized these four unsuspecting women, but the four women did not respond to his hypnosis. They were still staring at him, and their gazes were especially strange. You guys, Charlotte suddenly realized something, and a trace of alarm rose in his heart. At that moment, Helena suddenly pounced toward him. Her open arms covered the space for her to dodge to the left and right. Constantine also pounced from behind and hugged Charlotte's waist. Julia and Jennifer swooped down from the left and right. In that instant, the four women were like a cage that trapped Charlotte. No matter which direction he dodged in, he could not avoid them. Why did they suddenly become like this? What exactly happened to them? Charlotte did not have time to think at all. A second later, he was hugged by the four women. Some were holding his waist, some were hugging his chest, some were strangling his neck, and some were pressing down on his legs. In fact, he could have sent one of them flying with a punch or kicked them off the bed with a kick, but he did not do that. When he was surrounded by the four women, he only reached out and pried open Helena's hand that was strangling his neck. He did not care about the other three women. He thought that they were only restraining him and did not attack him. This was not normal. Xiale suddenly released the energy field of the branding power. When his energy field enveloped the four women were like toys that had lost their power, and all of a sudden, they all fell onto the bed. Some were sprawled, some were lying down, and some were curled up. The scene was unbearable to look at. At that moment, according to the feedback from the energy field, four white energy bodies appeared in Charlotte's mind. They were escaping from the bodies of the four women. In the blink of an eye, they gathered in the empty space beside the bed and turned into an energy body with obvious characteristics of a woman. Her eyes were very big, and her nose and mouth were very small. She looked like a cute girl from the anime. Charlotte could recognize this face even if it turned to ash. She was Aisatabu. He had expected Aisatabu to come back, but he did not expect her to come so quickly and so suddenly. After Aisatabu's energy body appeared, Charlotte did not need to use the energy field to sense her existence. He could see her with his eyes, and very clearly. Their eyes met. Charlotte and Aisatabu's expressions were very complicated. Charlotte stood up slowly. His legs were also quietly gathering strength. He was ready to jump back to the satchel that contained the crystal skull and the box of the world. Last time, he had used his heavenly spear to kill Aisatabu when Aisatabu wanted to eat him and polluted her energy body. This time, he did not expect to use the same method to defeat Aisatabu. In the room, there were four fair-skinned Sanuses and a pure energy body, Aisatabu. Her body was also very curvaceous. This should have been a very erotic scene, but in this room, there was only nervousness, caution, and killing intent. The air seemed to have frozen. Chapter 1300. I know what's in that bag. Istabel finally spoke. I'm really afraid of what's in that bag, but I have to remind you that you need time to get it, and I could do a lot of things in that time. For example, I can kill these four women and then attack you. Charlotte had actually run through his thoughts many times in his mind. He needed at least 1 second to jump to the bag, and then at least 2 seconds to take out the crystal skull or the box of world. 3 seconds was indeed enough for an existence like Istabel to do a lot of things. Of course, he could give it a try, but Istabel had made it very clear that as long as he dared to move, she would kill these four women. When he thought of these four beautiful and young lives dying, his body felt like it was bound by a rope, and his hands and feet were bound. Istabel laughed. Your weakness is still so obvious. Haven't you thought of changing it? Women, are women that important to you? The right to rule this world, and even decipher the mysteries of the universe, and obtain the most powerful power. Don't these appeal to you at all? Charlotte also calmed down. He slowly got off the bed. What are you trying to say? If I pursue power and become a monster like you and Keja Ruiz, what good will it do you? I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Tell me, how do you want to solve this? Istabel's voice turned cold, and her strangely large eyes were filled with hatred. What do you mean by how do you want to solve this? Umph. Istabel snorted. Don't play dumb with me. You know what I'm talking about. You're talking about... Charlotte avoided the topic. Let's talk outside. This is not the place to talk. Talk outside? You're still afraid that I'll kill them. Istabel sneered. I'm warning you. If you think about them even a little bit more, I'll kill them immediately. I'd like to see how important these 4 women who have slept with you after knowing you for less than 24 hours are to you. Charlotte was slightly taken aback. He had a feeling that, for some reason, the Aisatabu who appeared this time seemed to be a little different from before. Her emotions had become impulsive and irritable. In the past, she was cold and emotionless. No matter who or what she faced, her emotions would not fluctuate. She would kill whoever she wanted and do whatever she wanted without a trace of hesitation or scruples. But now, she was hesitant to kill these 4 women. This was something she would never have dared to imagine in the past. Aisatabu's body was actually a soul. Emotional fluctuations would cause her to become unstable. From this point of view, her injuries had not fully healed. What he had done to her the last time, the impact it had on her, and the consequences of that impact were something that even she herself couldn't estimate. All right, I don't care if they live or die. Charlotte shrugged and pretended to be indifferent. What does it have to do with me, whether you want to kill them or not? Is this true? Then I'll eat them, Aisatabu said, and looked like she was about to attack. Don't, Charlotte hurriedly said. I'm just kidding. Why are you so serious? It's fine if you want to talk here. Go ahead, I'm listening. I've already said it. How do you plan to solve this? Aisatabu suppressed the anger in her heart. Today, you have to give me an explanation. There was no point in continuing to play dumb. Charlotte knew very well what she was talking about. He smiled bitterly. You want me to give you an explanation? Then shouldn't I also want you to give me an explanation? Don't forget that you were the one who wanted to eat me. If I hadn't done that, I'm afraid I would have died in your hands. Aisatabu suddenly shouted at Charlotte. I didn't do anything wrong in wanting to kill you. Charlotte was speechless. It was really troublesome to reason with a woman. This truth applied to the human world as well as to Aisatabu. You threatened my plan. You tried to destroy my base. In fact, you did. What's wrong with me killing you? Aisatabu was showing signs of losing control of her emotions. Charlotte smiled bitterly and said nothing. What was the point of arguing? I can kill you, and you can kill me. But you actually used that disgusting thing to enter my body. Not only did you enter, but you also shot. Aisatabu said and did not want to go anymore. She raised her hand and pointed at Charlotte's lower waist. Cut it off. That's the explanation you should give me. Cut it off, and we'll talk about other things. Charlotte was so angry that he laughed. Do you think you're God? That I have to do whatever you say? That I have to fulfill your request? F***ck your mother. I'm standing right here. Don't you want to kill me? Come on. Don't you want to cut off my penis? Cut it off yourself. You can go to hell. Aisatabu suddenly pounced on Charlotte. Her pure, energy body instantly condensed into an oval shape. Like a football flying at supersonic speed, she hit Charlotte in the blink of an eye. Xiaolei was already prepared. He crossed his arms in front of his chest when she looked like she was about to make a move. Boom! A dull sound rang in the room. Charlotte's body was sent flying by Aisatabu. He shot toward the thick stone wall like a cannonball. However, the moment he hit the wall, Xiaolei hooked the tip of his right foot, and the satchel on the floor was lifted by the tip of his foot. It flew into his hands. Boom! The stone wall collapsed. Charlotte's body flew out of the castle and landed heavily on the ground. Aisatabu flew out of the hole in the wall. Her body once again turned into a football falling at high speed in the air. She directly hit Charlotte's head. If she hit Charlotte, his head would most likely split open like a watermelon under a hammer. Charlotte rolled close to the ground and instantly moved several meters away. Boom! A loud sound rang out, and a large crater appeared on the ground. Although Charlotte had already avoided this thunderous attack, he was still hit by the shattered stones in many places. His skin was torn and his flesh was exposed. He jumped up and quickly retreated. His right hand reached into the special satchel and took out the box of worlds. As soon as the world box appeared, Aisitabu suddenly retreated and instantly retreated to a spot several dozen meters away. Charlotte did not give chase. He held the box of worlds and vigilantly looked at Aisitabu in the distance. He probed, "Why are you so afraid of it?" Aisitabu did not answer Charlotte's question. She just stared coldly at Charlotte. "Why am I not afraid of it?" Charlotte continued probing. "Didn't you come here to find the answer?" "You will know the answer soon," Aisitabu said. Charlotte said, "He's on this island. Aren't you afraid?" "Oomph." Aisitabu just snorted coldly. There was a hint of contempt in her voice. "That guy's like a rat. He's dirty and cunning. He only knows how to hide in the dark and wait for an opportunity to steal. Do you think he's a match for me? I look down on an opponent like him. He's the same kind of person as you. He's a prehistoric figure in your world, right?" Aisitabu did not admit it, but she did not deny it either. Charlotte continued, "You look down on him so much and even disdain to be his opponent. But you made some kind of agreement with him, right?" Aisitabu still remained silent. She did not admit it or deny it. After venting the anger in her heart, she calmed down instead. This was what Charlotte did not want to see the most, because this Aisitabu was the scariest. Charlotte spread his hands. "You said you wanted to talk about something, but you didn't say anything. What else can we talk about?" Aisitabu was silent for a moment before saying, "Be careful that day. If you're smart enough, you might have a chance to live." Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "He's here. I don't want to see him," Aisitabu said. When her voice fell, she disappeared into the void. The rain was still laughing endlessly. It hit the ground, making a sound and splashing water. Some rainwater gathered in the big pit that Aisitabu blasted out. The reflection of a dark cloud was cast on the water. The dark cloud was especially thick. It seemed to be carrying something that would fall down at any time and smash the ground into pieces. Charlotte's gaze swept across the surroundings quickly from near to far. The mountain forest was dark. There was wind and rain, but he did not find anyone, nor did he find any animals. He did not find any trace of Queijo Ruiz either. He always appeared in a black robe. If he came and did not change his appearance, Charlotte was confident that he could find him. But he couldn't see or feel anything. He also had a feeling that danger was approaching. It made him feel that Queijo Ruiz was hiding somewhere nearby, spying on him and observing him. Chapter 1301. At daybreak, the rain stopped. The four women woke up one after another. The interval was less than a second. It was as if there was an alarm clock in their heads, waking them up when the time came. They saw the big hole in the wall and Xia Lei, who was standing beside the hole. He looked in the direction of the holy palace and didn't move at all, like a stone statue. "What happened?" Helena asked in surprise. "Why is there a hole in the wall?" "I didn't hear anything," Constantine said. Julia jumped off the bed and walked toward Charlotte barefoot. "Son of God, what happened?" Charlotte turned to look at the four women. "There was an attack last night. Apart from you, everyone here is dead." "Huh?" The four women were stunned. "I put their bodies in the church in the castle," Charlotte said. "I think they need a ceremony. You should go and take a look." The four women hurriedly put on their clothes and went out. Xiale also followed them and participated in the funeral ceremony that the four women held for the deceased. He didn't kill those people, but they died because of him. If he didn't come here, Aisitabu wouldn't come here. If Aisitabu didn't come, Johnson and the people here wouldn't have died. After the funeral ceremony, the four women went to the forest behind the castle with tools to dig a hole. Charlotte used a handcart to move the bodies into the forest, then helped the four women dig the hole. After working for a long time, they finally buried all the bodies. There were no tombstones. The four women tied wooden boards into the shape of a cross and wrote names on them. After working for a long time, Charlotte was sweaty and dirty. After returning to the castle, he went into a bathroom to take a shower. The four women also went to take a shower, but not with Charlotte. The people were all dead, and no one boiled water. The water that flowed down from the shower head was cold. Charlotte's skin had a very sensitive reaction, and his body's immune system adjusted accordingly. It only took him a few seconds to get used to the feeling of a cold shower. During this period of time, he had been drinking a lot of human milk, including some of the best breast milk given to him by women who had never had children before. The side effects of eating living humans and those infected with the hellhound virus had been completely eliminated, so his skin had returned to normal. It was no longer crystal clear, and his reaction to heat and cold was no different from a normal person's. Apart from this, his strength had also improved by leaps and bounds, becoming several times stronger than before. However, no matter how strong he became, after fighting with Isotab last night, he still came to a depressing conclusion. If they were to fight normally, he would not be able to defeat Isotab at all. Of course, he would not be able to defeat Kasha Ruiz either. After all, these two opponents had lived for an extremely long time. The number of people they had eaten could probably build an international metropolis. Longer evolution time, more energy. This was not something someone like him, who had only been on the path of evolution for a few short years, could compare to. Another point was that Isetebu and Kasia Ruiz were pure energy bodies, so they were not afraid of physical attacks at all. The marksmanship and firearms that he was proficient in were completely useless against them. Moreover, if he were to fight purely with the power of branding, he would obviously be in a weaker position. This was a situation that had no solution. As he was bathing and thinking about the problem, Charlotte suddenly remembered what Isotab said before she left. Be careful that day. If you are smart enough, you might have a chance to live. This was what Isotab said before she left. This sentence seemed to replay in Charlotte's mind, but he could not understand the intention of Isotab saying this, nor could he understand what she was hinting at. Believe her? Humph. Xiaolei snorted coldly, and a self-deprecating smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. She and Kasha Ruiz have been plotting from the beginning to frame me. Now is the time for her and Kasia Ruiz to reap the rewards, so why would she be kind enough to help me? Don't forget, she and Kasia Ruiz are the same kind, and she has a secret agreement with Kasia Ruiz to target me. Footsteps approached. Charlotte's thoughts were immediately interrupted. His gaze penetrated the bathroom door, and Helena, Julia, Constantine, and Jennifer entered his sight. The four women approached the bathroom door carefully. They were not holding a towel and clean clothes that they used to serve Charlotte, but 4 pistols. Charlotte could not help but smile bitterly. He could completely feel the desire for revenge emanating from them. It was obvious that they regarded him as the murderer. He was the one who killed Johnson and the people in this castle. The 4 women tiptoed to the bathroom, and the muzzles of their guns were aimed at the bathroom's wooden door. Shooting at the wooden door was a very simple thing to do, but they seemed very nervous and in pain. All of them were hesitant and could not fire. Charlotte's voice suddenly came from the bathroom. I do look very strange, but let me tell you, I am not the murderer. If I am the murderer, and I killed those people, why would I keep you alive? Would I keep you alive for revenge? His voice startled the 4 women outside the door. Helena quickly calmed down. She maintained the posture of pointing the gun at the wooden door and said, Don't try to lie to us. You killed one of our brothers when you came. You once bathed our holy palace in blood. Julia roared fiercely. Come out with your hands in the air. Otherwise, we will shoot. Constantine's voice sounded like he would shoot at any moment. The bathroom door opened, and Charlotte walked out. He had a towel tied around his waist, and he did not have time to wipe the water droplets off his body. Those water droplets made his body look very smooth and delicate. Coupled with his perfect mermaid lines, his body was simply a work of art created by a master. The 4 women were slightly stunned, but only for a moment. They still maintained the posture of pointing their guns at Charlotte, and all of them looked very fierce. They were knights of the hospital, after all, and not ordinary women. Charlotte shrugged with a relaxed expression. I will say it for the last time. I am not the murderer. I can't be bothered to explain it to you. If you don't believe me, then you can leave. The money I gave you is enough for you to live happily for the rest of your lives. We love money, but we will not betray our beliefs for money. Julia's voice said, and our chivalry. Helena's voice said, I don't want to kill you. Charlotte's voice turned cold. There was a limit to his tolerance. Helena suddenly threw a handcuff on the ground and then shouted at Charlotte, Put it on and follow us to the Holy Palace. Your sins need to be confessed in the Holy Palace Church, and then you will be judged. Just as she finished speaking, Constantine, who was standing next to her, suddenly kicked her in the butt. The kick was very heavy, and she staggered and almost fell to the ground. What are you doing? Helena looked at Constantine angrily. Constantine looked terrified. I don't know. I can't control my legs. As soon as she finished speaking, Julia, who was standing next to her, suddenly raised her leg and kicked her in the butt. She almost fell to the ground from the kick. I can't control my legs either. Jennifer was the one who kicked Constantine. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat. It's you. Helena suddenly understood something. She pointed the muzzle at Charlotte again. She wanted to shoot, but she suddenly realized that she could not control her hand at all. She only struggled for 2 seconds before throwing the gun on the ground. Helena was not the only one who threw the gun in her hand. At the same time, Constantine, Jennifer, and Julia also threw the guns in their hands on the ground. But this was not the end. Julia walked toward Helena, suddenly hugged her, and kissed Helena on the lips. The same thing happened to Constantine and Jennifer's hands. Not only did they kiss, but they also touched each other's bodies. The scene of a female knight's revenge was full of positive energy. In the blink of an eye, it was filthy and full of negative energy. Just as the 4 female knights were entangled, Charlotte walked to the bed. He took off his towel, put on his clothes, and walked toward the door with his equipment bag. Where are you going? Helena had 2 tongues in her mouth. Her voice was muffled, but she still tried her best to speak. The other 3 women were also ashamed and furious. Their minds were very clear. They knew what had happened, but they just could not control their bodies to do that shameful thing. Charlotte only turned back to take a look and then continued walking. Wrong. Constantine's voice was also muffled. Now that things had developed to this stage, the 4 female knights knew very well that if Charlotte wanted to kill them, they would already be dead. But he did not do that. With his ability, if he killed someone from the hospital knights, there was no need for him to deny it. Because even if he admitted to it, the hospital knights could not do anything to him. And they also thought of the $5 million. If Charlotte was the murderer, he did not have to give them so much money. They began to regret when they realized they were wrong. Charlotte stopped at the door. I want to go to your holy palace. If you have thought it through, then come. I will wait for you outside the castle. After saying that, Charlotte walked out of the room. The 4 women's bodies suddenly regained their freedom. Helena pushed Julia away, and Constantine also pushed Jennifer, who was entangled with her. The 4 women did not chase after him immediately. Is he really the Son of God? Jennifer murmured. Don't think about it. Let's go quickly. If he changes his mind, we will not be able to be with him, Constantine said. Serving him is the great captain's order, and nurturing him is the mission that God gave us. No matter which mission it is, we have to complete it. This is probably the greatest thing we can do in this life. Then what are we waiting for? Jennifer got up from the ground, picked up the pistol on the ground, and was about to chase after him. Hey, Jennifer, your underwear is about to fall off. Constantine's voice sounded. Jennifer looked down and almost fell to the ground. Her panties were wrapped around her ankles, and if she took another step, she would trip over them. She pulled up her underwear and glared at Constantine angrily. Constantine shrugged. I can't control my hand. It was the Son of God who made me do it. You should feel honored. There are 4 of us, and he only took off your fig leaf. Jennifer was speechless. The other 3 women laughed. Women were really strange creatures. In the corridor, Charlotte sighed. There was a trace of guilt in his heart. For him, the right thing to do was to let the 4 women leave Malta as far as possible, because that was the safest thing to do. But in the end, he still decided to take them with him because he needed their milk. Chapter 1302. The 5 horses galloped on the muddy road in the valley, and finally arrived at the seaside. Under the guidance of the 4 female knights, Charlotte crossed the reef area by the seaside, and then came to the waterway that led to the Holy Palace. Constantine pulled out a small boat from behind the reef beside the waterway, and the 5 of them entered the waterway. The waterway was not dark, and there were braziers on the rock walls to illuminate it. Under the illumination of the fire, the waterway was sparkling. Occasionally, a few fish could be seen swimming past the side of the boat. They were not afraid of humans at all. Constantine and Helena were at the bow and the stern respectively. The 2 women were rowing the boat with oars. Julia and Jennifer sat on Ciale's left and right, but they were clearly not idling around. Not long after the boat entered the waterway, Julia nudged Charlotte with her elbow. "Son of God, are you hungry?" Without waiting for Charlotte to answer, Jennifer, who was on the other side, had already lifted her top. "Son of God, your breakfast is ready." Charlotte was speechless. The Son of God's reserve disappeared the moment Jennifer leaned over. He craved power, so he also craved milk. The pitter-patter echoed in the quiet tunnel. Charlotte had tried his best to control the sound, but it was too quiet here. The slightest sound would be magnified, and it would sound especially loud. That strange sound caused trouble for the other 3 women. They did not want to look, but they could not control their eyes. It was as if there was a warm, furry worm crawling inside their bodies. Their bodies were itchy, and so were their hearts. No matter what, the nurturing boat sailed steadily, and there were no signs of it capsizing. After Jennifer and Julia nursed Charlotte, they went to take Constantine and Helena. Charlotte was also happy to take turns like this, so he had a full breakfast. The boat arrived at the pier at the end of the waterway. The pier was empty. There was not a single person, and only 2 braziers beside the stone stairs were burning quietly. "What's going on? There are usually guards here." Helena, who was the last to nurse Charlotte, stood up in the boat. As she spoke, she grabbed the hem of her shirt and pulled it down. The majestic snow-white scenery was immediately covered. Charlotte stood up from the boat. He licked the white stain off the corner of his mouth with his tongue and pointed to the water outside the boat. "The guard is down there. He's dead." The 4 women looked over, but they could only see the waves. They couldn't see anything underwater at all. "Where is it? Why can't I see it?" Jennifer said. Charlotte said, "I naturally have my ways to see it. If you want to see it, you have to dive." The 4 women looked at each other. In the end, no one was willing to dive down to see a corpse. Charlotte disembarked from the boat and stepped onto the pier's platform. His gaze swept across the rocky ground, and he quickly noticed the traces of being dragged on the rocky ground. However, there were only traces of the corpse. There was no trace of the person who dragged the corpse. Charlotte's heart sank. In that instant, he thought of one person, Kasia Ruiz. Then he thought of Isatab, but he didn't think the latter was very likely. Isatab didn't even know how to deal with corpses. It was the same situation in the knight's castle. She killed so many people, but she didn't touch the corpses at all. With her personality, those corpses were equivalent to dead fish and shrimps. She wouldn't bother to touch them. However, Kasia Ruiz was different. He was more cunning and cautious. Isatab even called him a dirty rat. So, Kasia Ruiz was the most suspicious. The 4 women also left the boat and stepped onto the pier. Charlotte's gaze swept across their faces. Go back and leave this place. Whether it's Italy or America, the further, the better. What about me? Jennifer stared at Charlotte. Charlotte said, "For your safety, I have to face opponents that are beyond your imagination. If you follow me in, you might die inside." "We are knights," Helena said. "This is our holy palace. If our brothers and sisters die, and we run away without even saying a word of prayer, are we still knights? Protect faith and help suffering. Julius said, "Protect faith and help suffering." The four female knights recited the creed of the Knights Hospitaller together. Charlotte shook his head with a bitter smile. He realized that his worries and persuasion were unnecessary. They were the holy ladies of the Knights Hospitaller. They had firm beliefs and beliefs. They saw honor as their lives, and they were not afraid of sacrificing themselves. Asking them to leave now would make them feel worse than killing them. "Since you've already made up your mind, follow me. But I wish you good luck." Charlotte entered the stone stairway. He had done all he could. They had made their decision, and they would bear the consequences. Since they were fearless and could face it calmly, why should he continue persuading them? After passing through the stone stairway, a beehive-like space came into view. Cave rooms were distributed on the mountain walls like beehives, and a small path spiraled to the bottom space. Standing at a high place, they could see the holy church at the bottom. Light shone from the church, illuminating the surrounding area. Some of the buildings in the underground space also had light, but no one could be seen walking around. The cave beside the stone stairway was pitch black, without a single light. This place seemed to have died suddenly, and there was no living person. Charlotte's gaze swept across the caves and finally landed on the holy church in the underground space. But whether it was the caves he had seen, the church in the underground space, or the surrounding buildings, there was not a single person, and there were no corpses. Xia Lei furrowed his brows. Everything here didn't look normal, and there was a strange aura everywhere. But he still braced himself and walked on. He had a hunch that this place was inextricably related to Cassia Ruiz from the beginning. It might even be Cassia Ruiz's old nest on the island of Malta. The four female knights followed Charlotte down. They did not know the situation, and when they passed by some caves, they would sometimes push open the door of the cave room to take a look. But no matter which cave they entered, there was no one in it. "Where did our people go?" Helena ran out of the cave, unable to hide the confusion and nervousness in her heart. "I just talked to Han's dad the day before yesterday. He said his grandson was admitted to university, and I even gave him my blessings. I don't know. Kane, who is very close to me, is also gone. He treated me like a brother. What happened? Is this God's punishment? What do we do wrong?" Julia's expression was very pained. Charlotte continued down, and he did not comfort the four female knights. Everyone in this world had their own destiny, and no one could escape it. This also included him. He came to Malta to welcome his own destiny. He could not even protect himself now. So how could he protect the hospital knights? He could not even protect himself now. So how could he protect the hospital knights? The figure of his father, Xia Changhe, appeared in his mind. The two fellows that his father was talking about were obviously Cassia Ruiz and Isatab. His father saw through the problem very clearly. If he wanted to prevent such a tragedy from happening again, he had to solve the problem at its root. Cassia Ruiz and Isatab were like the two malignant tumors of this world. Every time they acted up, they would bring suffering and pain to this world, and they might even destroy this world in the end. But how could it be easy to kill these two demons? The five of them arrived at the door of the Holy Church. Charlotte pushed open the tightly shut door of the church, and a statue of Jesus came into his sight. In that instant, he froze for a moment. There was a number written in red paint on the chest of the statue of Jesus. 3. This number made Charlotte's heart sink. He knew very well what this number meant. It was the countdown to his fate. He still had 3 days from now. Then who did it? Helena also noticed the number 3 on the statue of Jesus. She was very angry. This is blasphemy. Jesus, he's crying. Constantine suddenly pointed at the eyes of the statue of Jesus and exclaimed, "Blood tears." Red liquid flowed out of the corners of the eyes of the statue of Jesus. The red liquid looked very viscous, just like fresh blood. Julia and Jennifer pulled out their pistols and quickly rushed into the interior of the church. Helena and Constantine did the same. They also pulled out their pistols and rushed into the interior of the church. It was not strange for them to have such a reaction. They thought that the blood tears looked so fresh. If someone had done this prank, he might still be in this church. Charlotte did not stop them because he had already scouted the surroundings. There was no one else here apart from him and the 4 female knights. Charlotte walked to the statue of Jesus and looked at the number 3 on the statue quietly. A drop of red tear dripped down the cheek of the statue, and the number 3 was immediately covered up. But it was already lingering in Charlotte's mind. 3 days, 72 hours, 4,320 minutes, 259,200 seconds. Was that all he had left in his life? For some reason, a nameless anger suddenly burned in his chest. Charlotte turned and rushed out of the church. She stood on the platform below the church and roared, "Cassia Ruiz, get out here! Get out here!" His voice echoed in the dead silence of the underground space and did not stop for a long time. It was only his voice. There was no other sound. "Cassia Ruiz, you're a rat. Old rat." Charlotte was indignant. She was indignant at all. Cassia Ruiz still did not respond at all. He seemed to be a very principled person. He gave a time, and he would only appear when the time was up. If the time was not up, no matter how Charlotte insulted and provoked him, he was indifferent. There was not the slightest emotional fluctuation. Such an enemy was the most terrifying. Helena suddenly ran out with a nervous look. "Son of God, come have a look. We found something." Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. "What did you find?" "I don't know. You'll know when you come with me." Perhaps she was too nervous and anxious. Without waiting for Charlotte to say anything, Helena grabbed Charlotte's hand and ran into the church. Passing through the corridor between the tables and chairs, Charlotte's gaze fell on the statue of Jesus again. The tears of Jesus were no longer flowing. The blood-colored liquid showed signs of coagulation. They seemed to be human blood. But before Charlotte could take another look, Helena had already dragged Charlotte to Angelio's study. Chapter 1303. Angelo's study was very tidy. There were no signs of a fight, and there was no blood on the floor. Everything looked normal. Charlotte was no stranger to this study. It was in this study that he had beaten the former commander of the hospital knights half to death and forced him to tell him the location of the Holy Palace. At that time, he had also seen through the structure of the study, but there was no secret space or special design. On the way here, he was still thinking about what the 4 female knights had found in Angelo's study, but after looking closely, he found nothing. He was a little curious. Just as he was about to ask Helena who had pulled him in, Julia suddenly said something. "Godson, look." Julia handed a piece of paper torn from a notebook to Charlotte. No wonder nothing was found. The piece of paper was in Julia's hand, and he did not look at the 4 women. The paper was suddenly torn. It was not big, and it was in the shape of a strip. The paper was wrinkled, and there was an incomplete sentence written in Italian on it. Hell's Gate. Demon. Bathroom. The content on the paper was written horizontally, and the person who tore the paper tore it vertically, so what was left on the paper were 3 words in a long paragraph. These 3 words were inexplicable, like the manuscript of a nameless fantasy novelist. The publisher did not like it, so he tore it in a rage. Hell's Gate? Demon? Bathroom? Xiao Lei muttered these 3 words, but for a moment, he couldn't guess the connection between these 3 words. If it was a complete paragraph, what was written on the paper would be clear at a glance. The current situation was really hard to guess because too much content had been lost. "What is this?" Charlotte said aloud. "Helena, did you call me just to see this? What does it mean?" Helena said, "I'm not too sure, but the handwriting on this piece of paper is Commander Walton's." "So what?" Charlotte said. Helena recalled for a moment. When the incident happened at the Night Castle, the great commander was actually at the Holy Cathedral. Now that the hospital knights are in such a big mess, it's impossible for him to leave here unless something has happened to him. A wry smile appeared on Xiao Lei's face. Helena's words were as good as pointless. All the people here had disappeared into thin air. Was this not considered an accident? Julia suddenly thought of something and said, "I came to the commander's study 3 days ago. He even chatted with me for a while. He said something about a great day coming, and I asked him what it was, but he did not tell me. I still remember the look on his face. He looked so strange." Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. Great day. Did he say which day it was? Julia shook her head. He didn't say anything about that. The reason I remember this is because the commander seemed very excited at that time. It was so strange. It was a great day. Xiao Lei naturally thought of the end of his lifespan when he heard this. Could the great day that Walton was talking about be the day that would happen in 3 days' time? His mind was full of speculations, but his thoughts quickly returned to the shredded note. Where was this note found from? Helena said, "This note was found on the ground under the desk." Found on the ground under the desk? Charlotte asked again. Helena said, "Yes, I'm sure, because I was the one who picked it up." An image suddenly appeared in Charlotte's mind. Walton was sitting at his desk writing notes, or perhaps it was a diary. He was very excited. He wanted to record a certain great day, but for some reason, he tore that piece of paper. He tore the torn paper and threw it into the wastepaper basket, but the shredded paper fell under the desk. But the problem was, how could the words Hell's Gate, Demon, and Bathroom appear in an account of a great day? This didn't make sense. Is there a bathroom in this cathedral? Charlotte asked thoughtfully. Yes, Helena answered straightforwardly. There is a bathroom in the holy cathedral. It's in the Grand Commander's room, in the Knights Hospitaller. Only the Grand Commander has the right to stay in that room. No one else has the right. Bring me there, Charlotte said. All right, follow me. Helena led the way. Charlotte followed the 4 female knights into a room. It was a very special room. All the furniture and even every piece of the floor was very old. Judging from the paint color and the degree of wear and tear, it was at least 700 or 800 years old, or even more than 1,000 years old. The swallowtail cross emblem of the Knights Hospitaller could be seen everywhere in the room. Everywhere exuded a religious aura. There was a set of silver knight armor in the room. There was a 2-handed sword on the arm guard of the armor. The armor and the sword were also very old. There were many cracks on the armor, and there were many nicks on the 2-handed sword. It was not difficult to tell that this was a set of real knight's armor. The owner of the armor and sword was also a knight who had been through hundreds of battles. That is the armor and 2-handed sword of the first Grand Commander of the Knights Hospitaller. It is our holy relic, Julia said, her eyes filled with reverence. Charlotte was not interested in a set of scrap metal. His gaze swept across the room, full of antiques, and he quickly found the bathroom. The bathroom was in a corner of the room, and it was very small. The bathroom door was not a modern glass door, but an ancient wooden door. There was no modern water heater or shower head in the bathroom. There was only a large wooden tub and a stepping stool for people to climb into. There were 2 towels hanging on the bathroom wall, as well as a bath towel and some toiletries. This was the bathroom of the dignified Grand Commander of the Knights Hospitaller. It was really special. Charlotte walked into the bathroom. The 4 female knights followed Charlotte into the bathroom. The bathroom, which was already very small, suddenly became narrow and crowded. Charlotte's gaze slowly swept across the walls and floor, and finally stopped on the large wooden tub. There's nothing here, Jennifer said. Jennifer said, maybe it's just a boring piece of paper, and the things written on it are also boring. We shouldn't waste time here. We should go to the Holy Palace to look for clues. Let's listen to the Son of God. He will definitely help us, Constantine said. As soon as she finished speaking, Charlotte suddenly opened his arms, hugged the large wooden tub, and lifted it with all his might. With a crisp crack, the large wooden tub was lifted from the ground. The bottom of the wooden tub was double-layered, and the bottom layer was a structure for drainage. A plastic pipe was installed on the wooden plank. The diameter of the plastic pipe was the size of a fist, and the inside of the pipe was dark. It was impossible to see what was below with normal vision. However, Charlotte's vision had never been normal. His gaze had already slid down the plastic pipe. It was this slide that gave him shock. The bottom of the plastic pipe was empty. It went straight down, and he couldn't see the bottom. How was this a drainage pipe for a bathtub? This was simply a pipe that poured water into the ground. Son of God, did you find anything? Helena curiously moved closer to the plastic pipe, wanting to take a closer look. However, Charlotte pulled her away. Don't go near it. Be careful. This pipe is very strange. Is there a snake? Jennifer took a step back, and it seemed like she was very close. Charlotte smiled bitterly. He was already too lazy to explain to them. He directly said, "But find me some explosive devices. I want to blow up this bathroom." Huh? The four female knights stared at Charlotte, dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what he said. "Hurry up and go," Charlotte shouted. "Don't want to find out where your people went?" The four female knights then went out to get the explosive devices. Xiaolei was the only one left in the bathroom. Without the noise of the woman, his mind was a little clearer. His gaze shifted to the inside of the big wooden tub, and a little white congealed substance caught his attention. He reached out and dug out the white congealed substance, and then brought it to his nostrils to sniff it. A faint milky fragrance wafted into his nostrils. Charlotte was stunned for a moment. He thought it was the residue of soap or glass glue, but he never thought it would be the sediment of milk. And it wasn't milk, but human milk. He had drunk so much human milk, so he was familiar with that taste. In that instant, Charlotte seemed to understand everything. The Walton obviously wouldn't take a human milk bath here. He collected human milk, poured it into the bathtub, and then used the plastic pipe to transport it underground. What was underground that needed milk? Charlotte didn't believe in any milk-sucking monster, nor did he believe in any milk-sucking demon. He had already locked on to one person, Kasha Ruiz. Kasha Ruiz was also learning from him to drink milk. Only a few women around him knew that he could improve and perfect his evolution by drinking human milk, and he had never told anyone about it. But he drank so much milk, and he even bought milk from pregnant women to drink from the market. How could Kasha Ruiz, who had a temporary protection agreement with him, not know about it? This was what happened. Kasha Ruiz discovered his secret and even observed the magical changes in his body. So Kasha Ruiz wanted to give it a try. So the Walton was here to transport human milk to him. Kasha Ruiz's nest was finally found, and it was right under this bathroom. Charlotte's lips curled into a sneer. "You want me to drink milk? You're really too naive. Human milk, of course, is used to nourish humans. You and Isotab are people from another world, and human milk is not food for you. Moreover, you don't even have a body, so how are you going to absorb the energy in human milk? And even if you made clothes like Isotab, you're not the original owner of that clothes, so no matter how much milk you drink, it's useless. On this blue planet, there is only one person who could perfect his evolution by drinking human milk, and that was Charlotte. This was his exclusive path of evolution, and no one else could squeeze in even if they wanted to. Charlotte took out a glow stick from his large equipment bag, twisted it, and then threw it into the plastic pipe. The glow stick fell from the plastic pipe and kept falling and falling. Only after a minute did it fall to the bottom. In Charlotte's mind, a number that he had just calculated appeared. This pipe was 1 kilometer long. Chapter 1304. Boom! There was an explosion, and the wall of the bathroom collapsed. Smoke, fire, and dust were immediately released. The entire church was shaking, giving people the feeling that it was about to collapse. When the dust settled, there was a big hole in the bathroom floor. The plastic pipe was gone, and the big hole was full of mud and rocks. Although he couldn't see the bottom, Charlotte believed that he would find a way down soon. The reason was simple. The plastic pipe was 1,000 meters deep, and it was impossible for drilling equipment and related construction machinery to enter this place. Some people wanted to buy a pipe that was 1,000 meters long, so it must be empty down there. A few minutes later, boom, there was another loud explosion. This time, the ground collapsed, and a bottomless cave appeared at the bottom of the big hole. The light stick from before was buried in the mud and rocks and no longer glowed. Charlotte twisted 3 light sticks at once and threw them down. The 3 light sticks fell in different places and lit up different areas. With the weak light, Charlotte saw some of the situation at the bottom of the cave. There were stalactites one after another, and they were like spears piercing into the ground. Endless darkness covered the underground space, and no living things could be seen. This underground cave looked like the entrance to hell. Walton had written Hell's Gate on that shredded piece of paper. Before discovering this cavern, Xiale had thought it was just an idea based on his religious beliefs. Only after discovering this cavern did he realize that Walton was describing the cavern below him. The four female knights walked in, passed through the ancient messy room, and came to Charlotte's side. They looked around carefully, but they couldn't see the situation underground like they did when they came down. They could only see weak light and some white things in the area covered by the light, but they didn't know that it was stalactites. God's son, this. Helena's voice was full of surprise. Why is there a big hole here? I've been here more than 100 times, but I've never found this place, Constantine said. God's son, are we going down? Jennifer looked worried. Is it the world of demons down there? Charlotte was silent for a moment before saying, Your commander said very clearly that this is Hell's Gate. It's very dangerous down there. Go find me some ropes, then I'll go down and you guys leave this place. Leave here, Helena said. Rope, we've made it very clear. We're knights. We're not afraid of death. Constantine also said with a determined expression, Son of God, we will fight with you, even if there are really demons down there. Don't say any more. Charlotte said, There's no signal here. You should leave this place and contact the other knight's hospitaler. If your commander and the people here are all dead, you will be needed to rebuild the knight's hospitaler. But Julia wanted to say something, but hesitated. Charlotte said, Don't say that. Death is actually very easy. You can just close your eyes and it will be over. Sometimes living is more difficult than dying. Do as I say. You have your mission, and I have ours. The four female knights looked at each other. Finally, Constantine said, All right, we'll go find you some ropes. Charlotte watched the four female knights leave, and he thought to himself, All good things must come to an end. If I bring you down there, you won't be able to survive. I'll face my own fate. Cassia Ruiz's lair was down there. If he couldn't even guarantee his own survival, how could he guarantee the safety of the four female knights? After the four female knights left, Charlotte took off his equipment bag and put on the silver armor. He also put the crystal skull and the box of the world into his special bag. He also took out all the weapons in his equipment bag, but he only chose a Gale assault rifle and 2 high-explosive grenades. No amount of guns would be useful against an opponent like Cassia Ruiz. He could only rely on the power of his brand, the crystal skull, and the box of the world. The four female knights returned half an hour after they left. They used 4 masons' wheelbarrows to push 4 carts full of ropes over. They took all the ropes to the Waltons' room and connected them by hand. We found all the ropes here, but it's still not enough. I estimate that the total length won't be more than 600 meters, Constantine said. It's enough, Charlotte said. I'll figure out the rest myself. How can we do that? Julia said. If the ropes can't reach the bottom, it'll be very dangerous for you to go down rashly. Why don't we go to the knight's castle and find more ropes? Jennifer said anxiously. She put down the rope in her hand. Helena, let's go to the knight's castle and find more ropes. I'll go with you. Helena also stood up. Charlotte stopped them. No need. You can leave after the ropes are tied. Don't come back. The four female knights focused their gazes on Charlotte. They had complicated looks in their eyes. The man in front of them had suddenly barged into their lives, catching them off guard. At first, they were only ordered to serve and please him because the knight's hospitaler couldn't afford to offend him. In their subconscious, they actually saw Charlotte as an enemy. But after a series of events, they suddenly realized that this man had entered their hearts, and they couldn't forget him. It wasn't just because he was the first man to occupy their bodies. The main reason was this man's charm and the radiance of the Son of God that shrouded him. Now that he was going to leave, it was very likely that they would never see him again. How could they leave just like that? Charlotte could feel their sadness and the obvious emotions that they revealed. He smiled bitterly. Believe me, I'll be back. Then I'll go to Italy and treat you to pizza. That should be fine, right? Constantine suddenly threw away the rope in her hand and burrowed into Charlotte's arms. Constantine's plump breast pressed against his chest, bringing a soft and hot feeling. It was a very comfortable hug, but Charlotte's heart was filled with bitterness. He was actually not the kind of man who showed mercy everywhere, but those women always threw themselves at him like moths to a flame. The 4 female knights in front of him were a typical example. They were only sent by the Walton to please him, and their hearts were certainly not reconciled. But not long after, they couldn't bear to leave him. If he let them go, they would all be sad, and the atmosphere would be like a breakup. What could he do? Promise us that you'll come back alive, Constantine said in Charlotte's ear. Charlotte nodded. The 4 women tied the rope, one end of the rope to a pillar in the room, and the other end was placed in the underground cave. The careful Julia also tied a glow stick to the end of the rope. The glow stick hung in the darkness, only illuminating a dozen square meters, and nothing could be seen. This situation made the 4 women very worried. Charlotte had already made all the preparations. He said, "Go, leave this place. Remember what I said and contact your people. But remember, don't bring anyone here for the next 3 days." "Oh, what?" the 4 women asked almost at the same time. Charlotte said, "To live." The 4 women were slightly stunned, but they could see the seriousness of the matter from Charlotte's serious expression. Charlotte picked up his helmet and was ready to set off. "Wait, you!" Julia suddenly called out to Charlotte, but stopped herself. Charlotte smiled. "Don't worry, I'm very tough. I won't die. Go, don't be like this. You knights." Julia bit her cherry lips. "Eat a little before you go." Charlotte was speechless. Eat a little before you go. In the Chinese world, such words were usually said to people who were about to die. Julia was Italian, so she obviously didn't know what this meant in the Chinese world. She said it very clearly, and her actions were very on point. Without waiting for Charlotte to say anything, she lifted up her clothes. A snow-white scenery was exposed to Charlotte's vision. It was so delicate that it seemed like it would melt with a breath of hot air. The messy bathroom and the alluring Snow White did not conflict at all. Instead, there was a very special sense of beauty, and it was also very touching. Constantine, Jennifer, and Helena also lifted up their clothes, exposing their snow-white skin to the air. Mountains rose and fell in Charlotte's vision, and his nostrils also smelled that sweet and alluring smell. That smell was like a soft little hand grabbing his tongue. Try to pull his tongue out and put it back where it should be. A ball of fire also lit up in his lower abdomen. That flame burned quietly, burning. "Eat a little and go," Helena said. Her eyes were wet, and her eyes were also filled with anticipation and reluctance. Charlotte threw the helmet on the ground and pulled the golden-haired Helena into his arms. "Don't say go, it's inauspicious." "What?" Helena didn't understand what Charlotte meant. However, Charlotte didn't explain. He lowered his head and opened his mouth. With a moan, the holy nurturing began. Actually, it was not a big deal to have food everywhere. Right now, Charlotte was having food everywhere. He could eat whatever he wanted, and the feeling of being surrounded by delicious food was so refreshing. As he drank, Charlotte also slowly relaxed and thought things through. Even if he was going to die, he would die after eating his fill and having enough fun. If he really couldn't come out alive, he had no regrets. He had lived a happy life in this life. He had countless confidants and groups of children. He went from a kid working in a construction site to the richest man in the world. Even America had to be wary of him. It was worth it for a man to live to this extent. Clang, there was a crisp sound. Charlotte suddenly felt that a piece of his armor was missing. He suddenly realized something, and he said in a muffled voice, "You guys can't be serious, right? This is our tradition. During the Crusades, the Saintesses had to sacrifice themselves for the warriors of the order. Our love will give you strength and luck," Constantine said. Then she waved her hand, and there was another clang. "This is our blessing, Son of God. Accept our blessing. Not only will it bring you joy and relaxation, but it will also bring you courage," Julia said. Her voice was even more muffled than Charlotte's, and it was almost inaudible. Was that thing so magical? However, since the Saintesses said so, what else could he say? Then accept the blessing. Charlotte closed his eyes. Chapter 1305. The warrior in silver armor quickly descended and soon disappeared into the darkness. Next to the entrance of the underground cavern, for fair-skinned women looked down at the bottomless underground world beneath their feet. They wanted to see that magical man one last time, but they would never see him again. Tears welled up in their eyes, and then they condensed into tears. "Let's go." Helena broke the silence here. "Do you think we will see him again?" Julia asked. Helena shook her head. "I don't know, don't ask me." She actually wanted to know the answer too. Constantine patted Jennifer's shoulder. "Let's go." The four women slowly walked out. Each and every one of them seemed to be in a daze. After a few seconds, they suddenly turned around and picked up the clothes on the ground to cover their bodies. This was their situation. That man affected them so much that they even forgot to put on their clothes. And they did not know that while they were putting on their clothes next to the entrance of the underground cavern, a pair of eyes was staring at them 300 meters underground in the darkness. Charlotte shook his head hard, and only then did he clear the beautiful bodies of the four female knights from his mind. The beautiful scenery above his head was tempting, but he still looked away. He had enjoyed beauties and delicious food, and now it was time to fight for his fate. The darkness stretched endlessly in his vision, as if there was no end. Charlotte used his eyesight, and his vision penetrated the layers of darkness, and he saw further and wider places. What he saw gave him a big shock. This underground cavern was so big that it was beyond his imagination, and its shape was like a bamboo shoot that had been hollowed out. It was very small at the top and gradually expanded downwards, and his position was only 1/3 of the way down, about 200 meters away from the nearest rock wall. If he jumped down directly, he would definitely be smashed into meat paste, and even if he did not fall to his death, the spear-like stalagmites below would stab him to death. The rope made by the four female knights was about 600 meters long, and it was obviously impossible to use it to slide to the bottom of the underground cavern, but it was possible to use it to swing to the cliff wall, and then climb down from the rock wall. After making up his mind, Charlotte began to shake his body, and as he swayed, the swing of the rope became wider and wider. He was like a spider hanging on a spider's web, floating in the air with the wind, borrowing the force to reach the place he needed to reach. 2 minutes later, the rope sent Charlotte to the side of the cliff. Charlotte thrust his armored right hand into the crevice of a rock. The gap was less than a centimeter wide. Under normal circumstances, even a finger would not be able to fit through it. In that instant, his bones and muscles formed a perfect synergy, and he gathered all the strength in his body to a single point. Not only the power of his body, but also the energy of the branding power. The energy of the branding power within his body also gathered on his right palm. Kacha! His armored right hand pierced into the crevice of the rock like it was tofu. His left hand let go of the rope, and his body was fastened to the precipitous rock. Success! Charlotte, on the other hand, was still in a daze, staring at his right palm, which was stuck in the crevice of the rock, dumbfounded. This was the first time he had worn the silver armor. He had not expected the tattered silver armor to be so powerful. In his imagination, he estimated that he would have to try several times to fix himself on the rock wall. He even prepared a backup plan. That is, if he could not climb the rock wall while wearing the armor, he would take off the armor and try again. He did not expect that he would succeed after only one try. In fact, if you carefully analyze it, it is normal for the silver armor to be so powerful. A very simple example is that he once forged a samurai sword for Akiko Tsukino with fake X Mystic Gold, and only a little bit of X Mystic Gold was cast on the blade, and Akiko Tsukino samurai sword had the sharpness to cut iron like mud. Therefore, under the premise of using the power of the brand, it was not worth making a fuss about for him to plunge his palm into the rock. The strength of the silver armor made Charlotte happy, and he began to move down in the same way. He soon discovered that not only could he insert the additional palm into the rock, but he could also kick into the rock with his feet in combat boots. The rock he faced was smooth and steep, and many places were inclined inward at 120 degrees. But it was as if there was a ladder under his feet, and he went down very quickly and easily. Half an hour later, Charlotte came to the ground of the catacombs. The ground was full of stalactites of all kinds. From time to time, droplets of calcareous water dripped from the top of his head, adding bricks and tiles to the stalactites in the catacombs. Charlotte walked to the middle of the catacombs. He wanted to find the plastic pipe, and then follow the plastic pipe to find Queijo Ruiz. That was the plan, but he did not have much hope. If Queijo Ruiz was here, he should have appeared during the previous explosion. But even when he blew up Queijo Ruiz's roof, Queijo Ruiz did not appear. Passing through a forest made of stalactites, Charlotte found the plastic pipe. It had been smashed into dozens of pieces, falling here and there. It looked very messy, but he still found the right direction. It originally wanted to extend to the west of the catacombs. Charlotte looked up, but the west side of the catacombs was pitch black, and he could not see anything. But at the same distance, he could clearly see what was in other directions. That place was not normal. Charlotte walked to the west side of the catacombs, and a strange phenomenon occurred. He was getting closer to the rock wall in the west, but the feeling of not being able to see clearly was getting stronger and stronger. There seemed to be a boundless black curtain covering that direction, airtight, and hiding some secret. After walking for a distance, Charlotte finally found the reason. His energy field had captured a special kind of energy. This energy field was very similar to the energy field he encountered in Incheon, Korea. The most obvious difference was that the energy field in Incheon was transparent. It was like a huge soap bubble that enveloped the black building. But the energy field in front of him was black, like a boundless black curtain covering the area in the west of the catacombs, making it impossible to see what was behind. Charlotte suddenly remembered a name that Isitabu had given to Queijo Ruiz, Dark Apostle. Dark Apostle, this name did not have any specific meaning, just like Fast Legs Rooney, Invincible Hero, and the like. It was just a gimmick. Only now did Charlotte realize that it was not a meaningless gimmick, but a real attribute. At the edge of this dark energy field, Charlotte's heart was filled with surprise. Isitabu and Queijo Ruiz are both from the same world. One is a prehistoric figure, and the other is... He smiled bitterly. Isitabu is also not a modern figure. Tom doesn't seem to mean much to that world and their race. However, since they are from the same world and the same race, why are their energy fields so different? Could it be that in that world, the people of that race, their energy fields are actually different? These were all just his guesses. He could not be sure. However, the world of Isitabu and Queijo Ruiz had already attracted his interest. Because of his experience in Incheon, Korea, Charlotte did not dare to approach the black energy field recklessly. After observing for a while, he slapped a piece of stalactite and threw it at the black energy field with all his might. Bang! A sound similar to a grenade explosion suddenly resounded throughout the catacombs. That piece of stalactite instantly shattered. The energy field created by Isitabu would produce electricity when it encountered an attack, but the energy field created by Queijo Ruiz had an explosive attribute. If the two were to be compared, Queijo Ruiz's and his energy field was obviously more aggressive. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of gunshots rang out, and bullets flew through the black energy field. Boom, boom, boom. Every bullet exploded like a grenade. The warhead was directly torn into pieces. A magazine was emptied, and the black energy field calmed down. Charlotte did not reload the magazine and continue to shoot. It was meaningless to shoot again. Queijo Ruiz, Charlotte shouted at the black energy field. I'm here. How much longer are you going to wait? Come out. Although he was a little sure that Queijo Ruiz was not here, he could not help but try. The black energy field was still there, and only his own echo could be heard in the catacombs. It went from strong to weak, then disappeared, and finally there was only dead silence. Charlotte stood quietly for a while. He thought of a few ideas, but in the end, he rejected them all. This was not Isitabu's base in Incheon, where a helicopter would need to open the energy field to land. There was not even a mosquito here. The black energy field in front of him was like a tortoise shell lying on the ground. There There was not a single gap that could be used. The ideas that he thought of could not get in at all. Damn it, you're a tortoise. Charlotte was so angry that he did not care about his manners anymore. Old tortoise, do you know? Isitabu said that you're a rat. Now you're like a rat, hiding from me. Get out here right now. The sound of cursing echoed in the dark valley, but there was still no response from Keja Ruiz. Charlotte walked around the edge of the energy field, looking for a flaw or a gap in the energy field. He kept a safe distance from the energy field, not daring to approach it rashly. Just like that, step by step, Charlotte walked for a full half an hour before he reached the bottom of the rock wall in the west area. He found that the black energy field was not actually oval, but a semicircle. Half of it was exposed to the air, and the other half was embedded in the rock wall. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. He observed the structure of the rock wall, and then he dug a deep hole near the edge of the energy field. With the silver armor on his hands were like excavators, and the hard rock wall was as fragile as tofu under his hands. Every time his palm went down, a piece of the rock wall would fall with a crack. After digging the hole, Charlotte threw a high explosive grenade into the deep hole that was as long as his arm. Boom! A violent explosion sounded, and the rock wall trembled, and then a part of it collapsed. The black energy field that was connected to the rock wall also showed obvious fluctuations, but it quickly stabilized. Although he was not able to completely destroy it, Charlotte still saw a glimmer of hope. He climbed onto the pile of rubble, waved his arms, and continued to dig the hole in the rock wall with his armored palm. In just a few minutes, a deep hole that was as long as his arm appeared on the rock wall, and the other end of it extended towards the direction of the black energy field. Charlotte pulled the safety bolt of the second high-explosive grenade, and then stuffed it into the hole that he had just dug. Boom! With a loud noise, the rock wall that was already cracked from the explosion suddenly collapsed. The shockwave of the explosion sent the shattered rock fragments flying towards the black energy field. It felt like a heavy machine gun was madly firing at the black energy field. Boom! Rumble! Chapter 1306. Violent explosions rang out one after another. The rock wall, which had already been damaged, was affected and collapsed once again. This time, the collapse had hollowed out the bottom of the rock wall. Suddenly, huge rocks came crashing down from above. The largest of those rocks was probably over 1,000 tons. They came whistling down with the momentum of thunder and lightning. The power was comparable to meteorites falling from the atmosphere. Before the rock wall collapsed, Xiaolei had already turned around and dashed away. In that instant, the power of the brand gathered in his feet, and with every step he took, he would leap more than 10 meters. It really felt like he was flying. For steps, a distance of 50 meters. Charlotte's feet suddenly stomped heavily on the ground. Then his upper body bent down. His body was like an arrow that had been shot out. With a whoosh, he drew a silver trajectory in the air that was about 30 meters long. In that instant, a boulder that was at least 10,000 tons suddenly fell from a height of a few hundred meters. Like a comet, it smashed into the black energy field. Rumble! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly rang out. With a loud bang, the shockwave of the explosion pushed out in all directions like a landslide. Wherever it passed, everything in its path was destroyed. The grotesque stalactites were instantly blown into stone powder. Charlotte's body was like a leaf in the wind. With a whoosh, he was blown dozens of meters away. The power of this explosion was equivalent to the detonation of several ballistic missiles at the same time. It was enough to destroy a military base. If Charlotte was not wearing the silver armor, his body would probably have been torn apart. Not only him, but the entire underground cavern shook a few times. However, the underground cavern did not collapse. The space was too big. Moreover, it was made of hard rock. If it was a building built by humans, even if 10 Dubai hotels were tied together, they would probably be blown into ruins. Tui. Charlotte spat out the stalactite powder in his mouth. Then, he crawled out from the pile of stalactite powder. He was about 100 meters away from the center of the explosion but he was still almost buried alive by the stone powder. Thinking back to the scene at that time, even he had a lingering fear. The boulder that was over 10,000 tons had disappeared and turned into rubble. The black energy shield had also disappeared. It was as if it had never existed. Without the cover of the black energy barrier, the space behind the rock wall was revealed. It was a huge, arched stone door dozens of meters high. Behind the stone door was a black stone path, and the stone slabs extended upwards at a slanted angle. However, those stone slabs weren't embedded in the ground. Instead, they were suspended in the air. That's right, buying a stone slab didn't even have any support underneath. One after another, the stone slabs floated in the air. The distance between each stone slab and the gradual ascent of the slope reached a perfect degree. Even if he used infrared to measure the distance, there would be zero error. Piece after piece of stone slabs formed a heavenly road. What was at the end of this heavenly road? Charlotte's heart was filled with shock. His imagination was boundless, but he couldn't see further. The air behind the stone door seemed to contain some kind of substance that could suppress the energy of the brand in his body, which caused his eyes to be restricted. Everything in the world must have a counter. This was the law of the universe. Of course, the energy of the mark could not jump out of the scope of this law. Charlotte stared blankly for a few minutes before walking forward. Instead of guessing here and there, he might as well go in and take a look. However, even if he hadn't seen the truth, the impression this place gave Charlotte was already very high-end. At the very least, it was much better than Isotab's place. Oomph. Is this a rat's nest? You really know how to hide. I want to see what you've done in this world for such a long time. Charlotte paused in front of the arched stone door for a moment before stepping onto the first stone slab. The moment Charlotte's foot stepped onto the stone slab, it trembled slightly. It gave off the feeling that it couldn't bear his weight and was about to sink down. And beneath his feet, there was actually another bottomless pit. There were endless bottomless pits, as if they were about to reach the depths of the earth. This was not normal at all. Even the uncanny workmanship of nature couldn't create such an underground world. Charlotte's both feet stood on the stone slab. It was very strange. When he stood on one foot, the stone slab would tremble and appear unstable. But when he stood on it with both feet, the stone slab stabilized. What kind of stone slab was this? Charlotte wasn't in a hurry to climb up. His eyes moved to the stone slab under his feet. After careful observation, he found that these stone slabs were actually the stone of the faceless warrior statue. These stone materials didn't belong to this world at all. What is the identity of Cassia Ruiz? When he came to Cassia Ruiz's lair, Charlotte found that even if he exhausted his imagination, he couldn't guess Cassia Ruiz's identity. Charlotte climbed up, taking one step at a time and stopping at a time. Every step was careful. When he climbed to the 12th stone slab, there was suddenly a bright light in the world shrouded in darkness. The bright light was so bright that Charlotte quickly closed his eyes. At this moment, he was so nervous that he subconsciously squatted on the stone slab, ready to jump back. If he was attacked, he could go back to the starting point. However, the distance of 12 stone slabs was nothing to him. However, after waiting for a full minute, nothing happened. Charlotte opened his eyes, and the scenery in front of him quietly changed. In his field of vision was a street with people coming and going. There weren't many cars, but there were a lot of bicycles. Selling popsicles. Selling popsicles. Sweet popsicles. A peddler of popsicles was pushing his cart along the street. His cart was loaded with a foam box, which was covered with a thick towel. A man pulled a little boy as he passed by the street. The little boy looked like a tiger, lively and adorable. When he saw the popsicle vendor, he stopped and shouted, "Dad, I want to eat popsicles." The man's face showed a smile. "Do you want to eat?" "Yes." The little boy nodded his head very seriously. "Then Dad'll buy it for you." The man pulled the little boy to the popsicle vendor. Charlotte held the little boy's head, and tears welled up in his eyes, because what he saw was him and his dad Xia Changhe in the future. This is not real. This is an illusion. It's these extraterrestrial stones that are affecting my brain. But Charlotte couldn't help but look to remember. Is Dad still alive now? Did Dad go to the place where he had his first date with Princess Yongmei? Did Dad's heart feel at peace? These concerns also emerged in Charlotte's heart, and he couldn't control them. The situation was like this. He clearly knew what affected his brain, but because the other party's external force was too strong, he couldn't walk out of the illusion that he clearly knew. It felt like you knew you were dreaming, but you couldn't wake up. Even if you opened your eyes, you couldn't see the real world. His dad bought a popsicle for little Charlotte, and he took his hand and walked forward. Little Charlotte had a popsicle in his other hand, which was to be brought home for his sister Xia Shui to eat. His dad and little Charlotte walked further and further away, and the sky was dark. The surroundings were dark, and the wind was blowing. Crack! A bolt of lightning struck down from the dark sky, and a residential building appeared under the light of the lightning. It was a very simple residential building, without elevators, beautiful tiles, and glass. The outer walls were red shale bricks, and many places were mottled with red mud. A teenage girl appeared in front of the residential building. She was very young and very beautiful. She was holding a swaddle in her hand, and there was a baby in the swaddle. The girl entered the stairwell of the residential building and climbed up the stairs that were full of cigarette butts and waste paper. Her body was already wet from the rain, and her clothes clung to her body, revealing her exquisite curves. But in terms of female characteristics, she was still very young, far from the level of maturity. From this characteristic in her face, she couldn't be more than 18 years old. Rainwater dripped down from the girl's hair. Her forehead, eyes, and cheeks were covered in water droplets, but it was impossible to tell whether they were rainwater or tears. Her nose was red, and so were her eyes, as if she had just cried bitterly. The girl climbed to the rooftop, and she looked up at the thunderstorm sky. Suddenly she screamed, "Why? Why are you doing this to me? Why?" Sob, sob, sob. Crack. Rumble. A flash of lightning and a clap of thunder, and the whole world seemed to be shaking. The girl stumbled and fell on the rooftop, and the swaddle in her arms also rolled out of her hands. The swaddle opened, and a white and fat baby boy rolled out of it. He opened his eyes and looked at the sky. It was very strange that the raindrops the size of beans hit his tender skin, and the violent lightning and thunder did not scare him. He looked so quiet, and his eyes were serene, without the slightest fluctuation of emotion. The girl crawled towards the child, and she picked up the swaddle, preparing to pick up the child who had fallen on the rooftop. She reached out to the child, but just as she was about to touch the child, she retracted her hand as if she had been electrocuted. The girl cried, "No, no, no, I can't have you, I can't have you, sob, sob, sob. You're a monster. You killed me. You ruined my life." The girl cried, but the child did not even look at her and continued to look at the thunderstorm sky. His eyes were very strange and could not be deciphered. Do you know? Do you know? I just got into university, and I haven't even had a boyfriend, so how did I give birth to you? Tell me, where did you come from? Where did you come from? Say something." The girl cried, and her emotions had completely gone out of control. The child's eyes finally moved to the girl, but he did not cry, nor did he make a fuss. The girl climbed up and retreated, crying as she retreated, "Child, it's not that Mommy doesn't want you, but Mommy can't have you. If Mommy takes you, others will break Mommy's spine, and your grandma and grandpa will beat me to death. Don't blame Mommy. Just pretend you never came to this world. I don't have a monster like you for a son." The girl turned and ran, and she did not even leave the swaddle for the child. In such a thunderstorm, a newborn child was left on the rooftop in the cold wind and rain. This was not only abandonment, but also killing. Rumble. The rain continued to fall. The raindrops the size of beans fell on the child, causing his skin to tremble. Even an adult would not be able to withstand this level of rainstorm, let alone a newborn child. However, the child was still so quiet and did not make a sound. Chapter 1307. The young girl stumbled into the staircase leading away from the rooftop. When she entered the staircase, She turned around to look at the child who was lying on the rooftop. However, it was only a glance before she turned around and ran away. She never looked back again. Rumble, thunder rumbled, and the torrential rain continued. The torrential rain and cold wind battered the child, and his skin gradually lost its warmth. His eyes opened and closed, and the interval between each time grew longer and longer. This was a sign that his bodily functions were deteriorating, and he was about to fall into a dormant state or even die. However, just as the child was about to freeze to death, a man in a raincoat appeared on the rooftop. The man was tall and burly, and he held a compass in his hand. Crackle! A bolt of lightning struck down, illuminating the night sky. The man's face was revealed under the illumination of the lightning. It was a very familiar face. It was the face of his father, Xia Chang'e. Found it, found it, the old man mumbled to himself. He picked up the child, his hands trembling with excitement. That child was Charlotte. Charlotte suddenly understood. However, there was one thing he could not understand. His father was clearly not looking at the young girl. The hallucination before him had the nature of a memory. So, where did it come from? And the answer to this mystery seemed to be obvious. It was his own brain. Memory. Since it was a memory, it must be stored in the brain. However, back then, he was just a newborn child. His brain could not possibly have any memories. Moreover, after so many years, he could not remember anything. Why did it suddenly appear after he came here? As he was thinking, all the hallucinations disappeared. His vision was filled with darkness, and he could see nothing. Oh no, could it be that the energy field has activated again? Charlotte's heart was in a state of panic. He turned around to look. Sure enough, he could no longer see anything that he could see. The energy field had activated again. It was like a pot-lid cage, trapping him inside. Turning back, there was no turning back. Charlotte was prepared to continue climbing up. However, he suddenly realized that not only could he not see anything behind him, he could not even see the stone slab in front of him. The stone slab in front of him was only 1 meter away from him, but he couldn't see it. This was simply unimaginable to him. The darkness seemed to have suddenly increased. This space was like a bottle of ink, and he was in this bottle of ink. Every inch of space here was dark, so dark that one couldn't even see their own fingers. This kind of darkness even gave him a feeling of substance, as if it was a real substance, and not simply darkness that had lost all light. Then, the dark energy field began to move again. As the gravity increased, Charlotte could clearly feel the pressure on his bones. His bones rustled as if they would shatter at any moment. The gravity continued to increase, like a frog being boiled in warm water. Pooh! Charlotte spat out a mouthful of blood. His nostrils and ears were also bleeding. At this time, he felt extreme pain. Not only his bones, but also his internal organs. His internal organs and his bones felt as if they would shatter at any time. Is this the end of my life? Charlotte's brain was getting more and more dizzy. Such a thought emerged in his mind, and his heart was filled with bitterness. In this little time, if it weren't for the power of branding in his body resisting the external force, he would have been crushed into a pile of meat sauce at this time. The gravity was still increasing, pressuring everything in this space. Charlotte felt more and more pain, and his situation was getting more and more dangerous. On the verge of life and death, faces also appeared in his mind. The face of his father, Xia Chang'e, Xia Shui, Long Bing, Shen Tianin, Liang Xiao, Fan Fan, Jiang Rui, Tang Yuyan, Liang Jiayu, Xia Long, Xia Fan, Xia Jianghe, Xia Dawang, Xia Yang, Xiu. Every single one of these faces represented the person he loved the most. Every single one of these faces was also a tie that he could not bear to part with. A dash, Charlotte roared. He was not willing to die inexplicably like this. He was not willing to leave his wife and children like this. But even the most intense roar of rage was useless against the frenzied flames of fury. The gravity in this space was still increasing. In this time, he felt that his bones were really broken, his internal organs were also about to break, and his brain was also on the verge of a coma, and he could lose consciousness at any time, on the verge of life and death. Suddenly, a soft fluorescent light emitted from the satchel on his body. It was very weak, but in this absolutely dark space, even a little light was very conspicuous, like the ray of light that pierced through the darkness before dawn. This little light appeared, and the gravity on Charlotte's body receded like the tide. His bones were no longer rustling, his internal organs were no longer chaotic, and all the pain in his body disappeared. Charlotte's gaze moved to the satchel. He didn't need to open it, and he didn't even need to think to know what was emitting the light. The light coming from the satchel was pure and flawless, and it had a jade-like texture. This kind of light could only be emitted by the crystal skull. The crystal skull seemed to have saved him at the most crucial moment. The light from the crystal skull continued to emit from the satchel, and the soft and pure light slowly wrapped around him. It felt like Charlotte was the source of the light, and not the crystal skull. After coming back from the dead, Charlotte suppressed the excitement in his heart, opened the satchel, and took out the crystal skull. The light from the crystal skull spread further, and everywhere it passed, there was no more darkness. The suffocating gravity also disappeared, and it receded like the tide. The stone slabs that he couldn't see before appeared again. And it wasn't just the stone slabs that appeared. Charlotte could finally see further. This suspended stone sky path was actually not as long as he imagined. It was about 100 steps, and the length was no more than 100 meters. At the end of the suspended stone sky path, there was a stone mountain rising from the ground, and there was a building on top of the stone mountain. It was hidden in the darkness, and it was difficult to see it clearly. However, from its outline, it was very wide, and it seemed to be a majestic palace. The stone mountain rising from the ground, the majestic palace built on top of the stone mountain, and the suspended sky path that led to the palace. All of this looked so unreal, and it gave people the feeling that they were in a movie, not the real world. But what was the standard of the real world? There had never been any standard. Even if there was a standard, it was just a standard set by humans based on their own culture and feelings. And such a standard would not be recognized even by creatures on the same planet. Take insects, for example. In their eyes, humans were skyscraping giants. A tree was equivalent to a city. Charlotte didn't think too much about the authenticity of everything in front of him. Was that building on top of the stone mountain Queijo Ruiz's lair? He had stayed on Earth longer than humans had stayed on this planet. If this was all his doing, then it was not a strange thing. Charlotte held the crystal skull, and it continued to climb up. The crystal skull gave him confidence and courage. Since he had come here, he had to put an end to it. Step by step, one stone slab at a time, Charlotte approached the building step by step. The closer he got to the building, the light emitted from the crystal skull began to disperse the darkness around the building. When he stood at the end of the sky path that was suspended in the air, the true appearance of the building entered his line of sight with a single glance. It was a very strange building style. All the buildings were in the shape of a cube. Some were big, some were small, some were tall, and some were low. The first impression it gave people was that it was like a three-dimensional model drawn by a computer. All the buildings were piled up on top of the stone mountain, forming an oval shape. It seemed messy, but if one looked closely, they would find a pattern. They were like a whirlpool with distinct layers. Circle after circle of the cube, buildings rotated, advancing toward the center. All the buildings were black, so it was a black whirlpool. Xiaolei's line of sight crossed over the cube buildings and came to the center of the cube building complex. A huge cube building entered his line of sight. It was bigger than all the buildings in the black whirlpool, and it was incomparably majestic. But, judging from its shape, it looked like a cup on a motherboard. After this illusion appeared, a new optical illusion also appeared. The building complex at the top of the stone mountain looked like an oval motherboard. Could this be the architectural style of Queijo Ruiz and Isotab's world? Or was it something else? Turning off the observation, Charlotte's gaze returned to the front again. In front of him, not far away, was an arched stone door. However, it was not made of complete stones. Instead, it was made of stone strips piled up one after another. There was no cement between the stones, nor was there any kind of 3-in-1 soil. There was nothing, but the stones were firmly connected together, forming a majestic stone door that was tens of meters tall and tens of meters wide. Charlotte retracted his gaze and no longer hesitated. His feet stomped on the stone floor, and his whole body shot out like an arrow. He crossed the last distance of about 10 meters and landed on top of the stone mountain. The stone mountain was real. Charlotte's gaze locked onto the arched stone door. Without hesitation, he stepped toward the arched door. The crystal skull in his hand quietly emitted a soft and pure light. It was like a lantern in Charlotte's hand, and Charlotte was the guide of the underworld with the lantern. But he was not guiding the soul of others, but his own. Chapter 1308. Charlotte stopped in front of the huge, arched stone door. From what he could see, any piece of stone on the arched stone door weighed at least a few hundred tons. With such weight, even human cranes would find it difficult to lift it. And even if there were such cranes, no one could bring them to this place. So how were these stones hung and pieced together? It was impossible to imagine how it was done. Cassia Ruiz must have known the answer, but until now, he had not appeared. Charlotte walked into the arched stone door. The ground behind the stone door was also made of black rocks, but these rocks were not rocks of this world. They were very similar to the rocks that were used to make the faceless warrior statues. They contained an unknown energy. If it were not for the crystal skull in his hand to protect him, his brain would have been disturbed by this time, producing endless illusions. Charlotte walked towards the center of the black vortex. His goal was the huge CPU building. The stone road under his feet extended forward. It was curved, and circle after circle approached the center. On both sides of the stone road were cube-shaped buildings. There were no windows, but there were doors. In the process of walking, Charlotte could not help but enter several buildings. He was surprised to find that there were stone tables, stone beds, and stone chairs in those cube-shaped buildings. It was like the residence of ancient humans. Some of the buildings occasionally had some stone weapons, such as hammers and knives, stone axes, stone spears, and so on. But no matter which building it was, there was no one in it. Each building was clean and spotless. If one were to view this place as a city, then the people in this city seemed to have evaporated overnight, leaving behind this lifeless city of the dead. Charlotte's heart was full of guesses. Cassia Ruiz should not be able to build such a city. Because even if he had enough time and ability, where did these materials come from? But if Cassia Ruiz did not build this city, then where did it come from? Could it have flown over from another world? Then even if he flew over from another world, he should be on the ground. How could he drill into the ground? The hole in his head was wide open and could not be filled. Ta-ta, ta. Charlotte's footsteps echoed in the empty street, as if there was a ghost accompanying him as he walked. Cassia Ruiz. Charlotte roared. Come out. I'm already here. We don't have to wait for the day you said. We can end it in advance. His voice echoed in the dead city, but there was no response. Cassia Ruiz. You are a King mouse. Get the hell out here. Xiaolei opened his mouth and cursed. He wanted to use this method to provoke Cassia Ruiz to come out. There was still no response from the dead city, and his echo traveled far away. Just like that, he walked and walked. After walking for a full 2 hours, Xiaolei finally arrived at the center of the city and arrived in front of the huge building that resembled a CPU. This CPU-like building was located at the highest point and the most central location of the city. It was huge, majestic, and spectacular. In front of it was an arched stone door. The stone material was not complete. Like the stone door at the outermost entrance, it was made up of pieces of stone. They were of different sizes, and each piece weighed hundreds of tons. It was also the only entrance to this huge building. Other than it, there were no other entrances to this building. Charlotte's gaze passed through the arched stone door. His vision was filled with darkness. Even with the help of the crystal skull, he was unable to see what was behind the stone door. What was going on? What was inside the building? It was unimaginable. After hesitating for a moment, Charlotte walked toward the arched stone door. Beneath his feet were stone steps. He did not know why, but as he walked toward the stone door, every step he took felt like he was taking a step away from this world. He was leaving this world while he was leaving his woman and child. This was a path of no return. A few minutes later, Charlotte arrived in front of the arched stone door. Strangely, the crystal skull could disperse the darkness around him, but it could not disperse the darkness in front of him. The arched stone door was only one step away from him, but it was this step that he could not take. Charlotte looked back and walked toward the stone door. One step forward. Boom! There was a tremor, a very slight tremor. It was like a stone had been thrown into a calm pond. The space before him was filled with darkness. He could not see anything further than one step. This space was filled with infinite gravity. If it was not for the protection of the crystal skull, he would have been reduced to dust in less than 1/10 of a second. While Charlotte was still in a state of shock, the crystal skull in his hand suddenly trembled. It felt like it could be crushed by the infinite gravity at any moment. "Brother, you must be okay. If you break, I'm afraid I won't have a corpse left," Charlotte said to himself. Fear was like a shadow that could not be removed. The crystal skull continued to tremble, and the frequency increased. Perhaps fear finally won over courage, or perhaps it was the reluctance to part with the world behind him, or the people he could not bear to part with. These factors suddenly erupted. Charlotte turned around and walked back. He had only taken one step after entering the stone door. Under normal circumstances, he would have walked out after taking one step back. However, after taking 2 steps, there was still darkness in front of him. He could not clearly see anything further than one step. He took another step, and then a 3rd step. But after 3 steps, he still could not see anything further than half of his vision. What's going on? Am I lost? But I only took 1 step. This is impossible. Charlotte was still in a state of shock. The fear in his heart grew stronger. He could not find an answer no matter how hard he thought. He braced himself and walked forward. He soon realized that there was no sound under his feet. No matter how hard he walked, there was no sound under his feet. But the ground under his feet was clearly hard stone. He kept walking forward, 1 step after another. In the end, Charlotte began to run. He was extremely fast. Under the white light of the crystal skull, he was like a meteorite passing through the atmosphere. He became the most dazzling existence in this dark world. He ran and ran. He did not know how long he had run or how far he had run. After a while, he stopped. He still could not see clearly and did not know where he was. He did not even know where he was. He was completely lost. He clearly remembered that although this building was huge, equivalent to a football field, the distance he had run was more than 10 fields. How could he not touch the wall? Could it be that this is a different dimension? But is that possible? This is just the interior of a stone building. Damn, this place is too strange. I'm trapped here. Am I going to die here? Charlotte muttered to himself. His voice could not be transmitted. It could only be transmitted through the halo formed by the crystal skull. If someone came out to talk to him at this time, he would not hesitate to give them $100 million. Being alone in such a strange space felt like wandering in the depths of the universe. It was extremely lonely. The only thing that relieved him was that the crystal skull seemed to have adapted to the gravitational environment here. It had stopped vibrating. Charlotte did not want to run anymore. He sat down and took out the box of the world from his satchel. There were also 4 bottles of human milk in plastic bottles. That was the dry food that Helena, Julia, Constantine, and Jennifer squeezed out for him. These 4 bottles of holy night milk were also his only food. Once they were used up, he would face the problem of food and water. And in this place, he could not find water and food at all. Charlotte opened a bottle of milk and took a sip. The sweet and fragrant milk slid down his throat and into his stomach, bringing warmth to him. He also calmed down a little. He was no longer so afraid. He could even taste the owner of this bottle of milk. It was Helena's milk. Her milk had a slight strawberry taste. It was more sour than the other 3 female knights. He had now become the world's top milk taster. After drinking a few mouthfuls of milk, Charlotte wanted to cover the bottle. But then he thought that the milk had to be fresh to taste good, and the energy would disappear if left for a long time. Then, he simply tilted his head back and drank the remaining half of the bottle. He slowly drank 4 bottles of milk. If he still could not find the exit, he would eventually die of thirst and hunger here. At most, he would live for a while longer. He quickly drank 4 bottles of milk. Although he still could not find the exit, at least he had satisfied his craving for milk. If he was going to die, he would die happily. Gulp, gulp, Charlotte simply drank all 4 bottles of milk. He burped. Satisfying. He casually threw an empty bottle out. The plastic bottle flew out of the area enveloped by the crystal skull. As soon as it touched the dark area, it was immediately crushed into powder by the infinite gravity. Charlotte's heart was filled with horror. He grabbed another plastic bottle and threw out. This time, he locked onto the plastic bottle as he threw it. In his vision, the plastic bottle's flying speed was slowed down several times. He clearly saw the plastic bottle fly out and turn into powder the moment it touched the dark area. It was said to be powder, but there was nothing left of that plastic bottle. Not even powder. How terrifying. If it wasn't for the crystal skull, I'm afraid I'd end up like that bottle. Right? Charlotte's back was covered in cold sweat, and it was chilly. He did not throw the remaining 2 plastic bottles out, because the result would be the same. It would not change, even if he tried 100 more times. After sitting quietly for a while, a strange idea suddenly popped into Charlotte's mind. If I throw the box of time, what will happen? With this idea in mind, he grabbed the box of time and raised his hand to throw it out. But at this moment, a voice suddenly came from the depths of the darkness. You can't be that bored, right? Randomly throwing garbage in my place. Charlotte stood up abruptly and stared in the direction of the voice with vigilance. It was Kasha Ruiz's voice. Why am I in such a hurry to die? You still have 2 days. Kasha Ruiz's voice was a little closer to Charlotte this time. Charlotte said aloud, It doesn't make any difference to me if I die 2 days earlier or 2 days later. I'm not afraid of death, but I want to know why I'm dying. Show yourself. Let's talk. Then you have to put away the box of world. Kasha Ruiz's voice sounded. He no longer approached and seemed to stay at a safe distance. Okay, I'll put it away. Charlotte put the box of world into a special satchel. If Kasha Ruiz attacked him, he was still confident that he could take out the box of world from the satchel. There's also the crystal skull. Kasha Ruiz said. Oomph. Charlotte snorted coldly. Don't push your luck. This place has a terrible gravity. It doesn't affect an energy body like you, but I'll die. You want me to put away the crystal skull? Aren't you asking me to commit suicide? You also know the benefits of an energy body? Ha ha. Kasha Ruiz laughed. Poor Isotab. That bitch is obsessed with the real body. She's really stupid. At this point, he suddenly stopped laughing. You also want to lie to me. Even if you put the crystal skull in your bag, it will still protect you. The situation was indeed like that. The crystal skull had already started to protect him when he was still in the bag. Therefore, there was no difference between putting in the bag and holding in his hand. Chapter 1309. Charlotte did not put the crystal skull into the special satchel. He said, Do you know how Isotab described you? He said you were a rat. I never understood why he said that about you. Now I understand that you really are a rat, because only a rat would hide in this dark place and not dare to see the light. Are you trying to provoke me? Kasha Ruiz's voice was as cold as ice. Charlotte said, I'm just telling the truth. Ha ha. Kasha Ruiz laughed. Don't try to deal with me the way you dealt with that bitch, Isotab. I won't be provoked by you. Do you hear my laughter? I'm laughing, but there's no fluctuation in my heart at all. Charlotte was speechless. Put away the crystal skull. Kasha Ruiz's voice had the nature of an order. Charlotte snorted coldly. Who do you think you are? The god that dominates this world? Even if it's the god that dominates this world, I don't have to do whatever he wants me to do. My fate is up to me, not the heavens. Your fate is not in your hands, it's in my hands. Kasha Ruiz's voice was heard. Charlotte sneered. You want to kill me? What do you want from me? Since I have what you want, what are you waiting for? It's ridiculous that you actually want me to put away the world box and the crystal skull. Kasia Ruiz, you're very powerful, I admit that. But I still want to tell you, your opponent, I look down on you. In the depths of the darkness, Kasia Ruiz was silent for a moment before saying, "You really have some ability. You actually made me a little angry." He sighed. "Well, I gave you a deadline. I was going to wait until the deadline to find you personally, but I didn't expect you to have the ability to find this place. Since this is the case, let that day come early." Charlotte raised his vigilance. His eyes, and the power of branding were all activated. His body and consciousness instantly entered the highest combat state. At this moment, the darkness receded like a tide. Boom, boom, boom. Amidst a string of strange sounds, a bright light filled the entire space. The 8 energy pillars were placed in 8 different positions, forming an octagonal rhombus. The dark energy field just now seemed to be related to them, and the terrifying gravity also seemed to be related to them. Charlotte had seen Isotab's energy field before, but the one in front of him was different. They gave off a more ancient feeling, while Isotab's energy pillar seemed much younger. There was no standard to measure whether Kasia Ruiz's or Isotab's energy pillar was older or younger. It was just his intuition. His intuition was usually very accurate. With the light emitted by the 8 energy pillars, Charlotte finally saw the situation on the ground clearly. It was a piece of black rock with an extremely smooth surface and a faint feeling of transparency. It was like a huge piece of black jade. Within this piece of black jade, one could clearly see blue energy substances flowing, as if they were bolts of lightning imprisoned in the black jade. Kasia Ruiz appeared on the top of the octagon, wearing a black robe. He had no body, no face, and looked like an evil ghost in a wizard's robe. Kasia Ruiz did not want to have a body, but was that true? He always wore this black robe, allowing his energy body to prop up this robe, making him look like a human. He was actually a guy who said one thing, but meant another. The crystal skull lost its light and returned to normal. Without gravity and the interference of the energy field, its reaction also stopped. After all, it was an object without consciousness, and it would not take the initiative to react. But Charlotte still held it, and did not put it into the special satchel. "I'm here." Charlotte broke the silence between the two. "What do you want from me?" Kasia Ruiz did not speak. Charlotte's branding power extended towards Kasia Ruiz. The moment his branding power came into contact with Kasia Ruiz, his brain drew a picture based on the information captured in the energy field. It was the appearance of Kasia Ruiz's pure energy form. Although he came from the same world as Isotabu, his appearance was different from Isotabu's. Kasia Ruiz's head was much bigger, his eyes were very small, and his mouth was very big and protruding along with his chin. It was fine if the mouth did not open, but if it did, it would definitely be a bloody mouth. Isotabu looked like a cute girl from the 2D world, and he was obviously a mutated ugly man from the 2D world. However, it was normal that Kasia Ruiz and Isotabu looked different. After all, the former was a prehistoric character from the unknown world. Evolution would change Isotabu's appearance, but Kasia Ruiz's appearance was destined. "Stop looking," Kasia Ruiz said. Kasia Ruiz spoke. "Using your human aesthetic standards to judge my appearance, I am indeed ugly. However, in my time, I was a man who was liked by women." "I have no interest in your appearance at all," Charlotte said. "Since you're not in a hurry, I do not want to die so quickly. Since we're opponents, let's have a chat. At least let me know why I'm dying." Kasia Ruiz did not agree, but he did not directly refuse either. "What's going on with this place?" Charlotte probed. "These rocks obviously have some kind of energy. They can't be something from this world. These rocks form a city, but there is only one person in this city. But my question is not about your kind. I just want to know where this city came from." "Let's change the question," Kasia Ruiz said. He said to change the question instead of flatly refusing. This meant that he was willing to talk. But this cooperation made Charlotte feel a trace of sympathy, which made his heart desolate. What about my father? He is not your father. Didn't you see the truth when you came? I'm not related to him by blood, but I regard him as my father. I am different from you. I'm a person with feelings. I am not a rock, not a cold-blooded animal. He's just my dog. Do you still want to recognize him as your father? Queijo Ruiz's tone was obviously insulting. Even if he is a dog, I will recognize him as my father. You say he is a dog, but you are worse than a dog. Queijo Ruiz said amidst the laughter. You heard me laughing again, right? But I don't feel anything in my heart. Where is he? Dead, Queijo Ruiz said. Did you kill him? Charlotte clenched his fists. Queijo Ruiz said, no, he solved it himself. Originally, I was going to kill him. No one has ever dared to betray me. The consequence of betraying me is death. Unfortunately, I was a step too late. When I got there, he had already committed suicide. He died in a dry well. I don't understand why he would do that. Charlotte's body trembled slightly, and his eyes became moist. Queijo Ruiz, of course, wouldn't understand because he was just a mass of emotionless energy. Dad knew he was going to die, and his last wish was to go to the place where he and Princess Young May had their first date, and then go to the underworld to accompany Princess Young May. That dry well was obviously where Dad wanted to go. Queijo Ruiz must know the specific location of the dry well, but he didn't want to ask. Dad said that it was his secret, his last secret. Then let Father keep this a secret. He must have told you everything, or else you wouldn't have found this place. Queijo Ruiz said, why do you say I am the chosen one? Charlotte didn't want to talk about anything about Dad anymore. He should be able to rest in peace. Going straight to the point so soon, Queijo Ruiz said, but you have to remember, if I tell you this, you'll have to meet your fate. His words made Charlotte hesitate. The price of getting an answer was death. No matter who made such a decision, it wouldn't be easy. You keep saying that you're not afraid of death, but you're still afraid, right? Queijo Ruiz's voice had a hint of ridicule. Of course I'm afraid of death. Xiao Lei smiled bitterly. I still want to live with my woman and children for a few more years. I want to watch them grow old, and I want to watch my children marry and have children. However, I could take it up and let it go. People will have that day sooner or later. If I could choose, I'd rather none of this happened. But I don't have a choice. Since I'm the chosen one, then all of this is destined. Come on, tell me. Did Xia Changhe give you that compass? Charlotte nodded. There were actually 2 compasses in his backpack. One was the compass that he had repaired to find the last fragment of the box, and the other was the compass that his father gave him to find the chosen one. That compass had also given his father a hint, which was why there were those stories that happened in Jerusalem. However, he didn't plan to take out the compass. This story is very long. Queijo Ruiz said. Charlotte waited quietly. The box in your hand was first discovered by me, and I obtained it. Queijo Ruiz continued. But before I discovered the box, I first obtained the compass that your father gave you. Without that compass, I wouldn't have been able to obtain the box. Where did you get the compass? Of course not with you. Queijo Ruiz said. Didn't I leave some things for you? The bronze grimoire, iron book. Not everything inside is fake. There are also some real things. Everything about the box is real, but I only mentioned it briefly and didn't go into details. Now, I can tell you the truth. In my era, I was just an ordinary person. I had many beautiful dreams, but I couldn't realize them because I was very poor. Queijo Ruiz's voice suddenly made Charlotte vigilant. He wouldn't be so kind as to tell me his story. He's just a body of energy without emotions. Whatever he does, he only considers one thing, and that is his own benefit. He dragged such a simple question so far. Could it be that he's trying to stall for time? While Queijo Ruiz was talking endlessly, Charlotte's gaze suddenly shifted away from Queijo Ruiz. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.